Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
Before we begin, let me know where you're tuning in from down in the comments. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next tale. "Listen, Ted," said John Brock, the national sales manager. "If you want to move up, you really need to think about this. You've been with the company for almost 15 years. You're a senior sales rep, and this is your chance to advance. A few years as a troubleshooting rep, and you'll be lined up for your own district, plus a 20% raise as soon as you agree." "I get it, John. It's just the travel. Barbara is not going to be happy when she learns I'll be away for 3 days or more each week. She really dislikes it when I'm gone even for 1 day. What will she say when she hears this?" Ted shook his head. John nodded, understanding Ted's situation. "All right, Ted. Think about it and discuss it with your wife. She needs to know how important this choice is. It will shape your future with the company." John watched Ted leave, aware of the dynamics in Ted's marriage. Barbara was a strong-willed person, and John understood the difficulties Ted faced at home. He felt for Ted and what he would say to her about this decision. Ted returned to his office with a worried frown. He should have felt excited about the promotion. It meant more responsibility and a pay raise. But he knew it would likely bring up another argument at home. They seemed to be fighting more often lately, even though that wasn't always the case. They had once been deeply in love. His mind went back to their early years after college. He had studied computer science and started at a small software company with a lot of potential. Barbara had come into his life through a blind date set up by her brother. He remembered how beautiful she looked then, her hair shining and her eyes bright. They had enjoyed a lovely dinner at an Italian restaurant and wandered through the Italian market. As he walked her to her door, there was a sweet moment when she leaned in to give him a quick kiss before going inside. He felt captivated, certain that his feelings were real and not a passing crush. People began to call them the lovebirds. However, their relationship had faced a tough moment that Ted still thought about from time to time. Barbara had told him she needed to work late one evening, so he changed his plans to go out with friends. When he unexpectedly saw Barbara with another man, it felt like a betrayal. Seeing her engagement ring as she leaned toward him only added to his shock. He took off the ring and left, hurt and confused. Days went by with him ignoring her calls, filled with anger and sadness. He loved her, but her actions left him puzzled. Eventually, he agreed to meet her at her apartment to understand why she had hurt him. When he arrived, Barbara opened the door, and he could tell she'd been crying. "Barbara," Ted started softly, "I'm here because I need to know why this happened. I need to understand so I can move on. You have to see that what we had is now over. Please, just listen to me. It's not what you think," she pleaded. "Just listen, please, Ted," Barbara urged. Ted nodded, and they went into the living room. Barbara sat on the couch while Ted took the chair across from her. He noticed how anxious she was, fidgeting and tugging at her sleeve. She looked at him with hope while he remained quiet. "Okay, Barbara, I'm listening. Tell me why you felt the need to hide the truth from me. Also, can you explain why you met with someone from your past?" he asked, his voice firm. "No one else, Ted, I promise. Let me explain. The person I met was my boyfriend before I met you. Things were getting serious, but I wasn't sure how I felt about him. A few months before we met, I told Mark that I didn't love him anymore and wanted to end our relationship. He was upset, but eventually accepted it and moved on. I found out later that he had moved away, and I felt relieved. I knew I didn't love him and didn't want to hurt him. He called me a couple of weeks ago and asked to meet. I told him I was engaged and needed him to respect that. He seemed genuinely happy for me and asked me to at least join him for a drink so he could wish me well with my future husband. I knew it wasn't right, but he kept asking. I thought that if I met him just once, it would settle things. I was scared to tell you, so I thought meeting him briefly would let me finish this chapter." Barbara looked at Ted with hopeful eyes, silently asking him to understand her. She promised to be completely honest. Ted listened intently. Barbara continued, looking down. "I didn't expect him to get too friendly. If you'd seen it for a bit longer, you would have noticed I was trying to set boundaries. He kept asking for a goodbye gesture, and I said no firmly. I realized that meeting him was a mistake. Please, Ted. That's the truth. I was never unfaithful, nor did I want to be. I love you, Ted. I truly do, she whispered, tears rolling down her cheeks. Ted's heart softened. He believed her and realized he might have overreacted. He stood up and hugged her. She held him tight, feeling overwhelmed. Oh, Ted, I would never do anything to make you doubt me. Never, she said softly. They got married a year later. Barbara finished her bachelor's degree and started working full-time in the emergency room. Ted was a sales representative, struggling to sell software similar to what was already available. He kept trying, and they managed with their two incomes until Barbara discovered she was pregnant. She left her job to prepare for the arrival of their son, Andrew. They lived in a small apartment, but they were happy despite Ted's hard work to make ends meet. They talked and decided to try for another child soon. They both wanted 2 children and hoped they would be close in age. They knew money would be tight, but they felt strongly about their choice. Then something changed. The software company Ted had applied to before noticed his growing reputation. They offered him a sales position, which he eagerly accepted. He knew their products well and expected a big change in his income. He was right. The couple's money worries began to ease for a while. After their daughter Julie was born 2 years after Andrew, they decided it was time to move. They bought a roomy 4-bedroom, 2.5-bath home with a 2-car garage. A special part of the house was the study above the garage, which Ted quickly turned into his office. Despite Ted's higher income, their expenses continued to grow, leaving them living paycheck to paycheck. Their financial troubles, though not urgent, began to weigh on both Ted and Barbara, leading to disagreements about money and other things. Ted had become more cautious in his views, while Barbara supported more progressive ideas. She began to change her diet, focusing on vegetables and fish, which Ted did not like. They even started to disagree about how to raise the children. Barbara thought that Ted was too easygoing with the kids, and Ted felt Barbara was a bit too strict. What started as small disagreements turned into regular arguments, almost becoming a normal part of their relationship. They changed from being very affectionate to a couple who often clashed. Thankfully, the love they shared was real, and it laid a strong foundation for their marriage. Still, the arguments tested that love. That night after dinner, Ted brought up his promotion. Barbara looked at him and asked, "Okay, what's the downside?" "There's always a downside." Ted sighed and explained, "I'll have to be away at least 3 days each week, visiting sites across the country. But remember, it comes with a 20% raise right away, and I could get my own district in 3 to 4 years. Barbara's expression changed. "At least 3 days each week away from home? How can I support that? It feels like we're not even a team anymore. I don't like this, Ted, and I can't see how you would even think about it. I want you to know, I can't agree to this." Ted's expression darkened, and he felt frustration growing. Even though he expected this disagreement, staying calm was hard. "Look, Barbara, we've been trying to get a second mortgage for Andy's college tuition. Did you ever think about how we'll manage that payment? And Julie will be ready for college soon. Where will that money come from?" "I'm taking the job." He turned and left the room, leaving Barbara to think. Ted believed she would eventually understand. He felt sure that she would see he had no choice. They needed the money, and he wanted to move ahead in his career. Eventually, Barbara did come to terms with it, but there was tension at home for a while. They walked on eggshells around each other for a few weeks until things calmed down, but they both sensed that something was wrong. The arguments faded, but their talks became distant and formal, as if they were just acquaintances rather than a married couple. Kind gestures slowly disappeared. Eventually, a quiet peace returned to the Arnold home, but both knew things were different now. Weeks turned into months, and nearly 2 years passed since Ted took the new job. Julie Arnold finished high school and got into the same college as Andy. Ted's salary kept rising, easing their earlier money troubles. However, he felt uneasy and unhappy. He and Barbara seemed to be in a new stage of their marriage. They were polite and friendly, but Ted realized that the deep love they once shared had lessened. Even their moments together felt ordinary and lacked warmth. Ted felt discouraged and gradually lost interest in seeking closeness with Barbara. Barbara sat in Anne's kitchen, both sipping coffee. Anne noticed that Barbara looked tired and unusually quiet. "Okay, Barb, enough is enough. Tell me what's going on. You clearly have a lot on your mind. Is it about your marriage?" "Why do you always assume it's my marriage, Anne? Why does everyone think that?" replied Barbara. Anne took a deep breath and shook her head. "Barb, I often think it's your marriage because it usually is. People talk about you two. They call you the Battling Arnolds for a reason." Barbara lowered her head and was silent for a moment. "Anne, I've known you for almost 15 years since we moved here. You and Dave were our best friends, and we were heartbroken when he passed away. But I've always felt a bit jealous. You and Dave had such a loving bond. The way you cared for each other was clear every time I saw you two." Tears welled in Barbara's eyes. "Why, Anne? Why can't Ted and I get along? It's been like this for years. We just seem to annoy each other. I thought that not fighting anymore was good, but it feels worse now. We act like casual friends. It seems Ted doesn't care if we stay together or split up, and I truly worry that's where we are headed." Barbara looked at Anne, her voice soft. "We don't even share closeness anymore. He just stopped, and even when we did, it felt so distant, like it was just something we were expected to do. I sometimes think that Ted might be seeing someone else. It wouldn't really surprise me. It seems like it's only a matter of time before I find out the truth." Anne looked at her friend with concern. She understood Barbara's feelings but couldn't fully feel the hurt of being in a relationship that lacked care. "Barb," she said gently, "you know you need to do something, or it's going to be a tough road ahead." "I know, Anne. I'm not sure what to do yet, but I think things will change soon, and we'll just have to see what happens." "But enough about me. What about you? I haven't talked to you in days." Anne paused before replying. She didn't want to make Barbara feel worse with her happy news, but chose to share anyway. "Barb, I met someone, and I think I can really care for him." Barbara smiled warmly. "That's wonderful, Anne. It's been 4 years since you had a real date. Tell me all about him." "His name is Matt Weeks, and he's the new director of personnel at work. He took over for Doris, who just retired. He also lost a spouse, so I feel like we understand each other. Anyway, we've been talking, and he asked me out for dinner on Wednesday, and I said yes. I think I really like him," she admitted, a little excited. Barb cheered. "That's amazing news. We have to get you ready for this date. Let's book an appointment at the beauty salon for Tuesday. It's time for a haircut. We both wear it too long, and I have the perfect dress for you. We're about the same size, and it will look great on you. Plus, I have matching shoes." Anne laughed. "I feel so excited. It's just a date, Barb. It's not like I'm getting engaged. Who knows where this might lead, Anne? The important thing is for you to look your best. Don't worry about finding a babysitter. I'll take care of your girls. They're getting old enough that you won't need a sitter soon anyway. I just want you to have a good time. You definitely deserve it," Barbara said happily. That evening, Ted told his wife that the company Christmas party was coming up in a couple of weeks at the downtown Marriott. "Why don't you treat yourself to a new dress? It's been a while since we've had a night out, and I think we would both enjoy it," Ted suggested. Barb was a bit surprised. This is unusual for Ted, she thought. We haven't gone to one of these parties in a long time. Does he have a reason for suggesting this? I wonder if there's someone he wants to see at the party? "Okay, Ted. I might just do that. I could use a new outfit, and I saw a pretty white dress at the store a few days ago. By the way, will Phil Stein be at the party?" "Stein?" Ted repeated. "Why are you asking about him? You know he's not the best person around. Why are you suddenly interested in him?" he asked, suspicious. "Don't be so rude, Ted. Phil has always been very polite with me, and I find him interesting to talk to." "What? Are you actually getting jealous?" Barbara replied, secretly pleased that she had struck a nerve. Ted looked at her, wondering what her plan was. He knew her well and could sense that she had something in mind. Whatever it was, he felt it would not end well for him. He shook his head and went to his study. The next few days were tense between Ted and Barbara. Their short talk about the Christmas party and her mention of Phil seemed to deepen the crack in their relationship. They began to eye each other with suspicion and caution. Ted sensed that something big was about to happen. The following weeks went by without much change. Barbara did end up getting the little white dress she had wanted. She felt a bit unsure since the dress was quite bold. But she knew she still looked good in it, even though Ted might not like her wearing it to a party with his coworkers. Forget him, she thought. Let him see that others appreciate what he doesn't. Let him feel sorry. The day before the party, Anne was at the Arnold's house, watching Barbara show off her new dress. Wow, Barb, are you sure you want to wear that? It's a lovely dress, but there will be a lot of people at the party and it might attract a lot of attention. She laughed. And Ted will be so surprised, Barbara giggled. I can't wait to see his face when he sees me in this. But deep down, she had doubts about whether the dress was suitable and wasn't entirely sure she should wear it. She realized she shouldn't push Ted too much. Shaking off her worries, she looked forward to the impression she would make at the party. That evening, after getting ready, Barbara slowly walked down the stairs, eager to see Ted's reaction to her dress. He looked up from the couch and quickly got to his feet, surprise written on his face. "What are you wearing?" he asked, a mix of disbelief and concern in his voice. "You can't go out like that." "Why? Are you worried about what others will think? I can dress how I want," she shot back, and without looking back, she grabbed her coat. Ted felt his frustration grow. He knew she was doing this on purpose, testing him. He also dreaded the conversations he would have to face at work after this party. Feeling frustrated, he grabbed his coat and stepped outside to the car without waiting for her. Once he was behind the wheel, he started the car as soon as she got in. Neither spoke a word during the drive to the hotel. They arrived soon and let the valet take their car. As they walked to the main ballroom, Ted looked away while they checked in their coats. As they entered the ballroom, Ted quickly left Barbara and headed to the long bar. He ordered a scotch and drank it swiftly. John and Joyce Brock noticed the Arnolds come in, and John quietly said to Joyce, "Oh, it looks like Ted and Barbara are having a tough time again. I should go talk to him." He stood up and waited for Barbara to reach their table. Meanwhile, Barbara caught a lot of attention with her outfit. She sensed people looking at her as she walked in, and spotting Joyce, went over to say hello. Joyce smiled at Barbara and said, "Wow, Barb, that dress is beautiful." Then, with a teasing tone, she added, "Just make sure my husband doesn't get too close to you." John blushed a little and asked Barbara if she wanted a drink before he walked over to the bar next to Ted. He placed a hand on Ted's shoulder and said softly, "If you don't calm down, you're going to have a health scare. You look tense." Ted took a breath and replied, "Yeah, I know, John. I'll be fine. Just give me a few minutes. Did you see her outfit? It seems like she's trying to get attention, and not from me." "Stay here, I'll be back soon," John told him as he returned to their table, bringing drinks for Joyce and Barbara. He looked at the women and said he would stay with Ted for a bit before leaving again. Barbara turned to Joyce and whispered, "Joyce, I know Ted is upset about how I'm dressed, but it's not really that wild. I've seen more daring outfits." Joyce agreed. "I know, Barb. The dress isn't too outrageous, but I think Ted's upset because of the atmosphere. You know how it is here. Some guys find reasons to look for attention. Ted's probably feeling jealous and concerned. He might think you're trying to get attention when that shouldn't be the case, being married and all." Barbara sighed and said, "I understand, Joyce. Maybe I went a little too far with this outfit, but I wanted to see his reaction. Looks like I got what I wanted. Besides," she added with a smile, "a woman can enjoy some attention at my age." Barbara sounded sure of herself, but she felt uneasy and kept watching Ted. It wasn't long before Joyce's husband returned to the table, leaving Ted alone at the bar. As Barbara chatted with the Brocks and another couple that joined them, she kept glancing over at Ted. She almost decided to talk to him to save the evening when she noticed a woman who had been drinking too much stumble over to Ted. "Ted, can you buy me a drink?" Denise asked, leaning against him. Ted gently tried to push her away. "Denise, you've had plenty." Denise, who worked in accounting and had been joking with Ted for years, leaned in and whispered, "Ted, this is your moment. I've had too much to drink and my husband is not around." Ted, knowing she was just playing around, straightened her up and smiled. "Denise, your husband wouldn't like this, and I don't want any trouble." Suddenly, Denise wobbled a bit. "Ted, I think I need to step outside for a second. Can you help me?" Ted quickly wrapped his arm around her waist and guided her out of the ballroom and down the hall. Barbara watched her husband and the woman from across the room. Anger flared up inside her as she saw Ted with his arm around Denise. She gripped the tablecloth tightly. Unbelievable, she thought. So that's why he came here. Barbara's anger grew, and her expression hardened. She first thought about leaving the event, but then she took a deep breath. He thinks he can act like that in front of everyone. Two can play this game. As Barbara fumed, Ted was busy trying to find help for Denise before she got worse. He spotted some colleagues from work and called for help. They saw what was happening, laughed, and quickly took Denise into the ladies' room. Ted sighed in relief and realized he really didn't want to go back to the ballroom just yet. He kept walking until he found a door that led to a quiet outdoor space. He stepped outside, making sure the door didn't lock behind him. The air was chilly but refreshing. He took a moment to gather his thoughts, feeling more relaxed than he had in days. He stood there thinking about how he and Barbara had reached this point. He acknowledged that they had real issues in their relationship and needed to reconnect. He loved her and knew they needed to find ways to be the caring couple they once were. He believed that with love and understanding, they could fix what had gone wrong. Meanwhile, back in the ballroom, Barbara was surprised to see a tall man bending down to ask her to dance. She looked up and recognized Phil Stein. She smiled widely and took his hand, heading to the dance floor. She chuckled to herself. Perfect. I'll show him I'm still attractive. I won't just stand aside while he goes on. Wow, Barb, you look really amazing in that outfit, Stein said playfully. Sorry, I didn't mean it that way, he said, laughing. Barbara felt her cheeks get warm and looked around to check if anyone heard him. She playfully hit him on the shoulder. Behave yourself, Phil. You should be a gentleman. I am, Barb. You know that, he said softly as he pulled her closer for the slow dance that the band was playing. Barbara felt nervous as they danced close together and tried to step back, but he kept her close. She relaxed a little and rested her head on his shoulder. Stein kept asking her to dance and getting her drinks from the bar. Barbara tried to keep an eye out for Ted, but after a while she let herself enjoy Stein's compliments and the drinks he brought her. Meanwhile, Ted came back to the ballroom and quickly spotted his wife with Stein. Is this what she's been planning? Is the dress for him? All his good intentions about fixing their marriage faded away. He went to the bar for another drink, feeling more upset. He joined a group of friends trying to join the conversation, but when he looked around again, he couldn't see Barbara. He didn't see Steen either. He excused himself and began looking through the hall. After checking some nearby rooms, he found one that was slightly open. He carefully pushed it and stopped when he saw what was happening inside. Ted hurried into the room, feeling anger rising in him, and pulled Stein away from Barbara. Stein quickly stepped back while Barbara looked scared. Ted, don't, it was a mistake. Please, she said. Find your own way home, he replied, his voice tense with anger. He turned and walked out, heading to his car with tears in his eyes. Once home, he walked in through the front door and tossed his coat aside. He felt shaky and didn't know what to do next. Frustrated, he hit the wall, creating a hole. Startled by his own actions, he took a deep breath to calm down. Ted's first thought was about divorce. He couldn't stay married to someone who had let him down. But then he realized the weight of that choice. Could he really leave Barbara after everything? He reminded himself that their recent years had not been easy and thought maybe a separation would be best. Deep down, he still cared for her and wanted a loving relationship. Ted felt torn, caught between his anger and his love for Barbara. He knew that making any decisions now would be too hard. He decided to wait and talk to Barbara the next day, hoping they could work through this together. Feeling tired, Ted climbed the stairs, collected his things, and went to the guest room. He thought he wouldn't be able to sleep, and he lay in bed, wide awake. He heard a car pull into the driveway and the sound of doors slamming along with muffled voices in the hallway. Hesitant footsteps approached the stairs. Ted closed his eyes, trying to block out the sounds. He lay there quietly, focusing on his breathing. He thought back to a happy evening at the beach when he was a teenager. He remembered the setting sun and the sun's reflection on the calm sea. Soon, he drifted off to sleep. Bright sunlight came through the window, making Ted open his eyes. He squinted at the clock on the dresser. It was 9:33 a.m. His head throbbed and his mouth felt dry. Memories of the previous night rushed back to him, making him feel a bit nauseous, which he pushed aside. He went to the bathroom, took some aspirin, brushed his teeth, and rinsed his mouth. A hot shower followed by a quick cold spray made him feel more awake. As he got out, he noticed the master bedroom door was open and saw Barbara sleeping on the bed. Ted walked downstairs and into the kitchen. He picked up the coffee pot, but then put it back down. "Forget it," he mumbled as he grabbed his coat from the floor by the closet and left the house. He drove downtown, stopped at a diner for a late breakfast, and then headed to his office. It was quiet there that Saturday late morning, allowing him to finish up some work he had been putting off. It wasn't until almost 1 p.m. that he returned home, preparing himself for what he knew would be a tough talk with his wife. He wasn't sure how it would end. It could lead to a serious problem in their marriage or just continue their struggles. He tried to clear his mind, letting whatever would happen, happen. He entered the house and found Barbara in the living room. The curtains were closed and the room was dim, lit only by a little light coming through the edges of the drapes. She sat in the shadows, wearing her housecoat, looking tired and upset. He sat down heavily across from her and said, "We need to talk," he said softly. He noticed she wouldn't look at him. Finally, Barbara lifted her head and said, "Before you say anything, I want to ask you something." She paused, waiting for him to agree. Ted nodded. "Did you? Did you spend time with that woman who was all over you last night?" Ted felt his emotions surge and had to take a moment to calm himself. He stood up. Why do those who break trust often think others do the same? Maybe it helps them feel less guilty. To them, marriage isn't about love. It's a game to win, he replied quietly, staying calm. Barbara looked pale, and tears began to fall, yet he felt no pity. He continued, "To answer your question, no, I did not spend time with her in a way you're thinking. I asked for help, and my coworkers stepped in. I have always been faithful in our marriage. I have never acted wrongly with another woman." He stopped and looked at his wife seriously. "Can you say the same? Can you promise me that no one else has done anything with you?" Sadness was clear in his eyes. "How many? How many have you allowed into your life? How many times have you been untrue?" he asked softly. Her husband's questions made Barbara jump up, upset. "Never. No one has ever done that to me except you. What happened last night was a mistake, and I was trying to pull away when you came. Please believe me. It's the truth." She sat back on the couch, saying softly, "I have never been untrue to you." Suddenly, Ted's anger started to fade. He felt sorry for his wife, but he sat still, sorting through his mixed feelings. Then, almost unexpectedly, he turned to Barbara. "Sit up, Barb. I think we've reached an important point. We need to work hard to love and support each other, or we may need to rethink our marriage. Maybe last night was a wake-up call for both of us. I know things have to change." Barbara's tears had dried, and she listened closely. "Ted, you're right. I'm sorry for how I acted last night, and I hope you can forgive me. I know we need to remember why we got married. I love you. Please believe me," she said gently as she moved closer. Ted wrapped his arms around her, feeling relief and hoping for a fresh start. In the days that followed, they were careful with their words and actions. Things seemed to be getting better, and they both tried to be loving and supportive. They were committed to their marriage, which showed, but they noticed a certain distance between them. Because of this, their closeness felt different than before. A few days later, on a Sunday morning, Barbara made a cup of coffee for her husband and gently reminded him, "Honey, do we have enough supplies for the New Year's Eve party next week? I've arranged for the caterer, and the food and drinks will arrive as promised, but I'm not sure if we have enough drinks." "I think so, dear. But you know what? I'll go to the store and pick up a couple more bottles just in case," Ted answered. Barbara smiled at him and joked, "We need to make sure everyone drives home safely, or we might have overnight guests for sure." About 28 or 30 people attended the Arnold's New Year's celebration, and the atmosphere was full of food and laughter. Everyone seemed to be enjoying themselves. They all joined in the countdown to welcome the new year, exchanging happy wishes as the clock struck midnight. Barbara made sure to stay close to her husband. When the right moment came, she turned to him, wrapped her arms around him, and shared her feelings. "I love you, Ted Arnold. I love you with all my heart," she said softly. Ted felt a wave of emotion. "I love you, Barbara Arnold. I'm so thankful that you're mine," he replied, holding her tightly. As the night went on, couples started to say their goodbyes until only a few were left to help tidy up. The Arnolds appreciated everyone's help and settled into the calm of their home, with gentle music playing in the background. They turned off the lights, letting the glow of the fireplace fill the room. Ted and Barbara enjoyed a sweet moment together, moving gently to the music. They shared quiet words and small signs of affection, feeling a deep connection they had wanted for a long time. As the night continued, they held each other close, feeling a renewed sense of love and warmth. Their time spent reconnecting felt like a turning point, and in the following weeks, it seemed to restore the love and affection that had always been there. Small disagreements were easily resolved, and they learned to handle their life together with fresh understanding and kindness. It looked like the lovebirds had returned to the Arnold household. The next few weeks felt almost dreamlike. The love that Ted and Barbara shared seemed to fill the air around them. It took effort. They knew each other's habits well. They decided to focus on what brought them together, not on what pushed them apart. They realized that a happy marriage needed work, and they promised each other never to forget that again. Their new commitment stood out to everyone. People noticed how they interacted differently, and compliments flowed in. Ted's boss, John Brock, was especially enthusiastic when he talked to Ted about the changes in his friend's marriage. Their other friends were just as pleased, particularly Barbara's best friend, Anne. Anne and Barbara were sitting with cups of coffee in the Arnold's kitchen when Anne remarked again on the love that was clear in her friend's face. "Barb, I can't tell you how happy I am for you. I can't believe how things have changed. Every time I see Ted, I notice how much he cares for you. Did you discover a secret?" Anne joked. Barbara smiled warmly at her friend. "No, Anne, we finally understood. We realized that if we wanted our marriage to work, we had to put in the needed effort. I guess I always thought love was enough, but I was wrong. Hard work is essential to keep love alive. Thankfully, we figured that out in time." Barbara then grinned at Anne. "Besides, we have a wonderful bond now." It felt like their honeymoon all over again. "I feel like I have the best of both worlds," she said quickly, then changed the topic to ask Anne how things were going with Matt. Anne blushed and cleared her throat. She hesitated for a moment. Barbara looked at her friend with interest. "What's going on, Anne? Just tell me," she encouraged. "Well, Barb, I think it's time for Matt and me to take a step forward," Anne finally said, looking a bit nervous. Barbara stared at her in surprise. Then she shook her head and asked, "Why not, Anne? You've been together for so long. I don't get it." "It's both of us, Barb," Anne sighed. "We're both a bit unsure about changing what we have. We know that moving forward will change things, and I think we're both a little scared of that. I really care about him, and I think it's time." "Sweetie," Barb replied, "I totally agree, and I want to help you with that. We need a plan." The next Wednesday, Ted Arnold was in Atlanta, finishing a training session with a group of programmers. He was amazed at how quickly they understood the new program, and realized he wouldn't need to stay the whole 3 days. He thought he could finish by Thursday and catch a late flight home to surprise Barbara with a weekend trip. Everything went as planned. He got off the plane and headed out of the airport at 10:55 p.m. Excited to surprise his wife, he was lucky to find light traffic and got home in just 30 minutes. He saw Barbara's car in the driveway and wondered why she hadn't parked it in the garage. The house was dark as he quietly entered, not wanting to wake her. He set his bag and briefcase on the floor and quietly walked upstairs. Their bedroom door was open, and he saw that no one was in bed. Puzzled, he looked down the hallway at the study door, which was slightly open. He thought he heard some noises coming from inside as he walked closer. Gently, he pushed the door open a bit more and peeked inside. Moonlight came through the study window, lighting up the easy chair. He noticed something that unsettled him. Barbara's dress draped over the chair. Ted's heart raced as he noticed the sofa bed, which was open and seemed to have someone there. Shadows moved in the dim light, and he thought he heard quiet voices. Ted stepped back, confused and anxious. He felt a rush of heat, struggling to understand what was happening. He quickly turned and hurried down the hallway, almost losing his balance as he rushed down the stairs. Moments later, he found himself outside, breathless and holding his belongings tightly. He stood still for a moment, feeling dizzy and weak. Breathing was hard. Dazed, he moved to his car and sat in the driver's seat, losing track of time. Why? Why? His mind cried out. Why had she done this? How long had she been unfaithful? He felt deep sadness fill his heart as he faced the emptiness and sorrow. Tears flowed as he cried. Knowing his world had changed forever, it felt like he had no future, only a dark pit of regret. Finally, the tears slowed, leaving him drained. He tried to gather his thoughts, to make sense of everything. He started the car and drove without any clear direction. Then he shook himself awake and headed downtown. He parked at the Hilton and got a room. Dropping his bags on the floor, he went to the bathroom to wash his face. When he looked in the mirror, he was shocked by how tired he looked. He frowned, realizing he had to accept this new reality. He took off his shoes and sank into the armchair. Feeling a little calmer, he could think more clearly now. His thoughts drifted back to moments before they got married when he had doubts about her loyalty. Were those times truly innocent as she had said? He realized he didn't know her as well as he thought, and that thought weighed on him. He wondered why he hadn't confronted her directly. He knew he had been too shocked by what he had seen. A mix of feelings swirled inside him: anger, sadness, and a sense of love that had been broken. After a while, Ted had a vague idea of what to do next. Though he felt little anger, he wanted his wife to know how much she had hurt him. Maybe it was wrong, but he wanted her to feel some of the pain that now filled him. He moved to the desk and took out a blank piece of paper. He picked up a pen and wrote a short note. "Barbara, I'm leaving you. I have found someone else and will be moving away. Please do not contest the divorce papers my lawyer will send. Ted." Chuckling bitterly to himself, he wondered if this would hurt her after all, or if it would make her happy. Ted sat in the armchair, thinking about what to do next until tiredness finally took over, and he fell into a restless sleep around 4 a.m. When Ted opened his eyes a few hours later, it was past 8 a.m. He freshened up and got dressed before going to his office, trying to avoid any unwanted interactions. He slipped into his office and prepared a short resignation letter for his boss, John Brock, but was surprised to find Brock already at his desk. "Ted, what's wrong? You look unwell," John said, clearly worried. "John, please, don't ask any questions," Ted replied as he handed over his resignation. John looked at him, confused. "What's going on? I can't just go along with this without knowing what happened. We're friends, right?" Ted sighed, feeling heavy with worry. "You're right. We are friends, but I can't talk about it. I need to leave, and I need to leave today." He turned to walk away. "Wait, Ted, I won't ask you anything, just don't quit. Take a break instead, okay?" John urged. Ted paused and nodded. "Thanks, John," he said softly, appreciating his friend's support. Next, Ted went to his bank to take out a large amount of cash and buy travel checks. Checking the time, he rushed to meet Carl Ballard and arrived just on time. "Carl, I've known you for over 15 years and I need a big favor. I know you usually don't handle divorce cases, but I need you to take care of mine. I won't answer any questions, but here's a retainer of $5,000. I want you to prepare a power of attorney to represent me. If something important comes up, you can email me. Otherwise, let it proceed based on irreconcilable differences. Give Barbara whatever she wants, I really don't care." Ted leaned back, feeling exhausted. Carl looked at him in surprise. "You really think I can manage this without asking anything? A power of attorney? You trust me that much?" Ted nodded. "Please, just do what I ask." Seeing the worry in his friend's eyes, Carl sighed. "Okay, Ted. I hope that one day you'll explain what led to this. In the meantime, I'll get the paperwork ready for you to sign." "Thank you, Carl," Ted replied, feeling a little lighter, even if just for a moment. "I'll be back in a couple of hours to sign whatever you have. I need to take care of a few things." Ted left Carl's office and headed home. He knew Barbara would be at the hospital, volunteering like she did every Friday. It felt strange. Everything he was doing that morning almost like he was watching it from a distance. He went through the motions but felt like an observer in his own life. Ted walked into his house and went to the kitchen. He left a note for his wife on the table and, as an afterthought, took off his wedding ring and placed it beside the note. Then he went upstairs and quickly packed another suitcase. Moving into his study, he noticed the sofa bed was now folded up. He suddenly felt dizzy and fought off a wave of discomfort. Quickly, he grabbed some personal folders, left the room, and soon was out of the house. After parking in the garage before heading back to Ballard's office, Ted called his children. He was surprised they were not completely shocked by the news he was leaving their mother. They had grown up hearing the arguments and disagreements. They had somewhat expected that something like this might happen. Ted kept quiet about what he found on Thursday. He simply told his mother it was time for them to move forward. He assured her that he loved them and would keep in touch. After that talk, he felt relief that it was done. After signing the necessary papers and shaking hands with Ballard, Ted was ready to leave about half an hour later. He made sure his gas tank was full and drove towards New Jersey, picking up I-295 South. As he drove, he felt some of the tightness in his chest ease. It was like he had closed one chapter of his life and was starting a fresh one. Although he understood that sorrow would always be with him, he thought maybe he could set it aside and move ahead. Deep down, he realized he was trying to escape and that this didn't bother him. Barbara Arnold sat at her kitchen table, her husband's letter on the floor beside her. Her face was pale, and her eyes were wide with shock. She stared blankly in front of her, not really seeing anything. She lost track of time since walking into the house. Her mind struggled to understand what she had just read. She felt numb. The phone ringing snapped her back, and she answered it automatically. "Hello," she said, her voice lacking emotion. "Barbara? Is that you?" Anne asked, worry clear in her voice. "Hello," Barbara repeated, but suddenly dropped the phone. She stared at it on the floor, feeling confused. Her gaze shifted back to the letter nearby, and a frown crossed her face. She tried to remember what the letter said, knowing it was important. Suddenly, her expression twisted in pain, and she began to whimper, which quickly turned to tears. She cried until it felt like her heart would break, then cried some more. "Barbara, Barbara, where are you?" Anne called as she rushed through the open front door. When she entered the kitchen, she saw her friend at the table with red, swollen eyes and messy hair. "Barb, what happened? What's wrong?" Anne asked, nearly shouting now. She noticed the letter on the floor, picked it up, read it, and turned pale as she understood the situation. Looking at Barbara, she felt a wave of sympathy. Barbara's tears had begun to slow, and she was gasping for breath. Anne quickly wet a dish towel and handed it to her. "Wipe your face, dear, and try to calm down. You need to pull yourself together," she said gently. Why, Anne? I can't believe this. We were finally making progress. Things were looking up for us. I know he loves me, Anne. I really do," Barbara cried as she fought to manage her emotions. "Barb, you need to get through the shock of what just happened," Anne replied, searching through her bag. "Here, take one of my calming pills. It will help." She poured a glass of water and helped Barbara take the pill. She then took Barbara to her bedroom and helped her lie down. "Get some rest, Barb. I need to get back to work, but I will come by later and bring dinner for us. I plan to stay here tonight so you won't be alone. Don't worry, just relax." Barbara nodded, sighed, and closed her eyes. Anne paused for a moment before heading to her car. About an hour later, Anne was having a late lunch with Matt Weeks. She shared what had happened with Barbara. "I'm really worried about her, Matt," Anne said quietly. "I don't know how she'll manage." Matt listened, showing concern on his face. He had grown to like the Arnolds and considered them friends, especially since Anne was close to Barbara. He looked a bit puzzled and interrupted her. "Wasn't Ted supposed to be back from his trip this evening? How come he was home early this morning? It seems strange that he didn't tell Barbara he was back," Matt said thoughtfully. He shook his head and added, "I think you should go to Barbara's place tonight and stay with her this weekend. She will need some support." Anne looked at him with appreciation. "You really are a kind man, Matt. Thank you. That's what I plan to do. I'll call you from Barbara's," Anne replied as she got up to leave. Matt stayed seated for a moment, a strange look on his face. He was thinking about what Anne had said, and he felt uneasy. Suddenly realizing the time, Matt rushed to the elevators and went to his office. Once inside, he took a telephone book from the shelf and flipped through it until he found what he needed. He picked up the phone and dialed. "Hello, Pinkerton Security and Investigations. How may I direct your call?" Later that day, Ted stopped to get gas south of Richmond, Virginia. He noticed an Army-Navy store across the street and made a quick decision. Even though he had packed suits and dress shirts, he realized they were no longer needed. He entered the store and bought khaki pants, denim jeans, plaid shirts, athletic socks, and a pair of sturdy brown shoes. Before paying, he grabbed a simple beige baseball cap. After he finished his purchase, he decided to avoid the interstate and checked his map for the secondary routes. He chose a road and headed west. He drove through small towns, making sure to follow all speed limits. He stopped at cozy motels and ate at local diners when he got hungry. He was pleasantly surprised by the quality of the food, which tasted much better than the big chain restaurants. It was home-cooked food with large portions. On the third day, Ted stopped for breakfast at a small diner with a flickering neon sign trying to say Mom's Kitchen. The N was out, and no one seemed to care. Inside, he saw a few booths and a small counter with 5 stools. He sat next to an older man who looked him up and down. The waitress, who did not resemble any mom he remembered, took his order and brought a hot cup of strong coffee. After a sip, he heard the older man speak. "Howdy," he said in a deep, raspy voice. Ted nodded back. "Where are you headed?" the old man asked. Ted turned to him and noticed the older man's sharp blue eyes, tired as if they held many stories. "West," Ted said shortly. The old man nodded as if he expected Ted to say that. Moments later, he asked, "Where are you coming from?" Ted felt a flash of annoyance. Why all the questions, he thought. He turned to the old man and shrugged, saying, "East." Ted felt relieved when his breakfast arrived. He enjoyed the eggs and sausages, thanking the waitress who refilled his coffee. "You're running. It won't work, buddy. I've been there. It all catches up to you," the old man warned. Ted turned, ready to respond harshly, but saw tears just behind the old man's eyes. Suddenly, he felt uneasy. He tossed some money on the counter and left quickly, not looking back. Before long, he was back on the road. What was that all about? Ted muttered to himself. Is everyone a therapist? Just what I need, advice from a stranger? Yet the old man's words stuck with him as he drove. Deep down, Ted knew he was running away, and he sensed it was silly. But he couldn't deal with things now, or was it that he simply didn't want to? Ted also understood that with sorrow and grief came anger. It wasn't a strong rage, but a dull bitterness. His mind wandered back to the moments that almost made him leave Barbara. He realized they were connected to things he had seen. She had always been clever. Though he never suspected she was unfaithful, now he thought she might have been. Suddenly, he felt a wave of worry and pulled to the side of the road. He was trembling and short of breath. The thought hit him that his children might not even be his. "Oh no," he said aloud. Feeling sick, he barely made it out of the car before he was overcome. Tears started to fall, and he struggled to regain control. "No more tears for what was," he vowed. "Time to move on," he whispered to himself. The next few days blurred together in a haze of motels and small diners. He was tempted to stop at bars with their bright, fading signs as he drove by in the evenings, but he knew drinking and driving was a bad idea. A night in jail was not worth it. As he got closer to the Nevada border, he suddenly decided to visit Las Vegas. The lights and sounds of the city could give him the escape he really wanted. A few hours later, he arrived, amazed by the busy streets and crowds. He saw the entrance to the Golden Nugget and thought it would be a nice place to explore. At check-in, Ted carried his own bag to his room. He immediately went to the large window that showed the city below. "Wow, it looks like the Emerald City," he thought, captivated by the bright view. He quickly freshened up and changed into slacks and a polo shirt. When he went down to the casino, he felt a bit lost in the mix of noise, lights, and all the people around him. It seemed like a lively, busy place. Ted walked past the slot machines with their ringing sounds. He soon spotted the poker room and headed there, finding it much quieter. He stood and observed for a moment before moving to a corner table where 5 people were playing Texas Hold'em. Besides the dealer, There were 4 older men who seemed to be having fun, along with a woman in her mid or late 30s. Ted noticed right away that the men were not very skilled at the game, while the woman was clearly outsmarting them. Ted sat down at the table, tossing some cash to the dealer for chips. One of the players laughed. "Well, we have some new competition. Time for some real poker, guys." Ted smiled at the woman, who returned the smile. After about 2 hours of playing, Ted found himself winning around $800. The older players were easy to read and had made some poor choices with their cards. He learned that the woman's name was Gail, and she lived in Las Vegas. Soon, the players left the game feeling frustrated. Both Ted and Gail decided it was time to leave, too. Gail smiled and said, "That was an interesting couple of hours." Ted laughed. "You mean a profitable few hours? How much did you win, if you don't mind me asking?" "About $1,200 a good night. Some people underestimate women at the table, and I often do well against them." She grinned. "I'm having a drink for the road. Want to join me?" Ted really didn't want to start anything with a woman, but this seemed harmless, and he figured he wouldn't see her again. "Sure, Gail. A drink before bed sounds nice." They sat in a booth at the lounge, enjoying a small band while sipping their drinks. Ted found out that Gail was a single mom with a 12-year-old daughter who earned a good living by playing poker. "If tonight is what you usually experience, you must do very well," Ted said. "Tonight was a bit better than normal, but I still do all right. Didn't someone say there's a sucker born every minute?" Gail laughed. After having another drink and talking more, Gail stood to leave, saying she needed to wake up early the next morning. She shook his hand, looked him in the eyes, and said softly, "Ted, I hope whatever is bothering you gets better. You might not see it, but you seem really sad. I hope you find peace soon." With that, she turned and walked away. Ted stood there, surprised by her understanding. He shook his head and went to his room. Although he didn't expect to sleep much, he soon drifted off and didn't wake until mid-morning. The next day, Ted explored the Strip, visiting different casino hotels. He was amazed by all the fancy ways they tried to get visitors. Each casino felt somewhat the same, filled with slot machines, blackjack tables, and roulette. By evening, he grew tired of exploring and went back to the Nugget. After a quick dinner, he wandered around the casino floor. Suddenly, he felt a tap on his shoulder and turned to find Gail smiling at him. "Hi, Ted. Are you going to try your luck at the table again?" Ted was happy to see her. "Maybe later, Gail. Do you have a game tonight?" he asked. "Yep, a big one. If I'm lucky, this might make my year. My daughter is at a friend's house tonight, so I can stay late." "Wish me luck," she said, smiling as she headed to the poker room. Ted smiled after her and thought about joining her game. However, he realized he might distract her and decided to enjoy other games instead. He wandered the casino floor, played some blackjack, and tried his luck at craps, ultimately breaking even. As he passed the dollar slots, he suddenly changed some bills into coins and started playing the machine, lost in thought. His mind kept returning to troubling things. He felt a sense of betrayal, wondering how long it had been and if what he knew was just the beginning. He knew he would have to face the truth eventually, no matter how hard that would be. For now, he hoped that distance and time would help ease his pain. Suddenly, the casino filled with excitement. Bells rang and people around him were celebrating. Ted turned around, puzzled about what was happening, and found a large man shaking his hand while cameras flashed brightly around him. "Congratulations, my friend. You just hit a big jackpot," the man shouted. "Follow me, please." With that, the man in the tuxedo led him to the lobby and through a long, plush hallway. Seconds later, Ted found himself sitting comfortably in a big leather chair in front of a large desk where a man took a seat. The door opened, and a well-dressed woman in her 40s walked in. "Let me introduce myself and Tess to you. I'm Harry Davis, the casino manager, and this is Tess Lewinsky." Tess smiled at Ted and shook his hand. "Tess is an attorney and a CPA and manages this part of the business. We have more staff like Tess here all the time. Now let's talk about what you've won. You are a guest here, so I already know your name, Mr. Arnold. The papers in front of you are standard for this purpose. Sign where Tess shows you, and we can finish this paperwork." Tess Lewinsky explained to Ted what he was signing and why each form was needed, while Harry Davis watched with a smile and puffed on a large cigar. Okay, that's done. Thank goodness, Harry boomed. This is the part I love. I can tell just by looking at you, Ted, that you have no idea what you've won. Harry grinned at Ted's puzzled face. Okay, Ted, after taking out the fees, you've won exactly. Harry looked at the check in front of him. $674,566 and some change. Not bad for a few coins in a machine. He laughed. Ted sat there feeling completely stunned. I can't believe this, he said quietly to himself. Life had taken a surprising turn, and he was struggling to understand it all. Ted, continued Harry Davis, this is just a suggestion, but I would strongly advise you to deposit this check right away into a money market account. We have a major bank branch here at the hotel, and they can help you open an account and make the deposit quickly. You'd be smart to do that. Ted immediately saw the sense in this. Good idea, Harry. Let's do that right now. I can help with that, Mr. Arnold. There will be a few more forms to fill out, Tess Lewinsky said. She was quick and efficient, and soon he had over $500,000 safely in a money market account. Ted turned to Harry Davis. Harry, how much attention will this win attract? Am I going to have to avoid the press for a few days? Harry laughed. You must be kidding, Ted. This is not unusual. All the casinos here often have jackpot winners. It's good for us and keeps customers coming back. I doubt your win will even make the local news, let alone anything bigger, he replied. After discussing a few more details, Ted, still feeling a bit dazed, made his way back to his room. He opened the minibar and poured himself a scotch and water, sipping it as he sat there trying to understand what had just happened. He shook his head in disbelief and was then surprised to hear a knock at his door. Gail, Ted said with some surprise, I didn't expect to see you here. Hi, Ted. Aren't you going to invite me in? Gail smiled at him playfully. Oh, of course. Sorry about that, Ted replied, looking surprised. With a sparkle in her eyes, Gail kept the conversation going. I see you have a drink, Ted. Are you going to offer me one? Ted paused for a moment before going to the bar and getting her a drink. He held the glass for a moment and then handed it to her, saying, Word travels fast, doesn't it? Gail smiled back, but there was a hint of frustration. You really think I'm here because of luck? I shouldn't blame you. You don't know me or who I am. Gail settled in and raised her glass to him before taking a sip. Let me tell you something, Ted. I would have come here, whether I was lucky or not. I do well for myself, as you can see, and I don't depend on anyone else for money. I'm here because I like you and, for some reason, I trust you. She looked deeply at him and then set her glass down. Ted sat there, speechless, trying to understand everything that was happening. He realized she had a strong presence. Gail's confidence was clear, and as she smiled at him, Ted felt a connection between them. He tried to swallow and noticed he was feeling flustered. Gail moved closer and sat on his lap, resting her arms on his shoulders. This is my life, Ted. I don't want a long-term relationship, so I take chances when they come up, and you are one of those chances. Are you open to this, Ted? Seeing the surprised look on Ted's face, Gail laughed lightly. I think I surprised you, didn't I? Women aren't supposed to take charge in these situations, right? Well, I'm not following that rule, so what do you say? While Ted was starting to think clearly again, he still felt a mix of confusion and emotion, but this didn't change the intensity between them. His hands were resting on Gail's waist, and as he leaned in, he noticed a small mark on her neck, which brought back memories he wasn't ready to face. Without warning, he broke down, overwhelmed by emotions that had been building up. Whether it was the events of the day or his struggles with relationship issues, he trembled and tears fell. He tried to steady himself but couldn't hold it in. Instead of pulling away, Gail gently cradled his head, allowing him to let out his feelings. When the tears finally stopped, Ted opened up about the pain he was feeling. As he leaned back, emotionally drained, they both felt the strange nature of the situation. Gail got up from his lap, found a hotel robe to put on, and sat on the edge of the bed. Ted? Gail asked. You've been holding on to this for weeks? Don't you see how unhelpful this is? Ted looked at her, confused. Unhelpful? What do you mean? What have I done that's so unhelpful? Gail smiled kindly. Ted, You need to sit down and talk to your wife. You have to face the situation. Running away won't help anything. It might feel easier now, but later you'll wish you had let her explain. You might be right about why you left, but you'll always wonder unless you talk to her. At least give yourself a chance to find peace. Avoiding it will only make you feel worse. Ted shook his head. I can't, Gail. I can't go back right now. It's too painful. I know you're right, and I will have to go back eventually, but I need some time alone to gather my thoughts. Gail looked at him with understanding. Okay, Ted. I wish you the best. You seem like a good person, and I hope things get better for you. But I need to get dressed and head out. I can tell you're not in the right mood for anything romantic, she said with a smile. The next morning, Ted checked out and drove south without hesitation. He wanted to reach his destination quickly, even though he didn't know where that was. He felt mixed emotions and realized he needed time to sort through them. He found himself on Route 93, heading south. When he saw signs for Phoenix and Tucson, he decided to go there. About 7 hours later, he arrived in Tucson, feeling hungry and tired. Ted saw a courtyard hotel and decided to stop. He checked in, took the elevator to his room, and fell onto the bed. Well, he thought, I'm here, but now what? Is this what I want, moving from place to place? He shook his head in frustration. After washing his face and fixing his hair, he walked to a diner across the street from the hotel. Even though it was early, the diner was quite busy. Smelling the delicious food from the kitchen, Ted understood why. He sat at the counter, looked at the menu, and placed his order with the waitress. He noticed the person next to him enjoying what looked like a salad and some toast. With a grin, the diner said, "Looks like healthy food, right? I'm supposed to be on a diet, but I don't know how long I can stick to it." "You don't look heavy," Ted joked, glancing at the man. "Yeah, my partner is a nutritionist. She watches everything I eat and says I need to lose some weight, but I'm not complaining. I know she cares about my health." Ted felt a wave of sadness pass over him. He smiled at the man as the waitress set down his order of a small steak and baked potato in front of him. He was hungry and quickly finished his meal. "Wow," said the person dining with him. "You must have really been hungry. By the way, I'm Bud Troop. I own the real estate agency up the street." And he extended his hand. Ted shook hands, and a new idea popped into his mind. "I'm Ted Arnold, Bud. This meeting might be helpful for both of us. You're in real estate, and I'm looking for a place to stay for a while. Maybe a small house on the edge of town, fully furnished? Do you have any suggestions?" Ted asked, feeling he was in new territory. Bud looked at Ted more closely, showing some doubt. "I might have something, Ted, but I should let you know that it could be a bit expensive. How much are you willing to spend?" Ted kept his gaze steady as he replied, "Price isn't a big issue, Bud. If you have something that catches my interest, I'd like to see it. If I like it, the cost won't matter." Bud blinked in surprise and smiled, realizing first impressions can be wrong. At first he thought Ted seemed to be struggling and assumed he might not be able to afford what he wanted. They decided to meet the next morning at Bud's office to look at some places Bud felt would be a good fit for Ted. Early the next day, Bud drove Ted to a development on the outskirts of town near a large desert area. The house was a nice adobe ranch on a well-kept lot. It was placed at the end of the block with only one other house nearby, separated by a large area of cacti and plants. There was a 2-car garage and a path to the front door. Instead of going in right away, Bud led Ted to the back, where Ted's expression lit up at the sight. The back of the house was shaded by a welcoming overhang. Comfortable outdoor furniture surrounded a large, clear pool. The view was beautiful, stretching out to a mountain range in the distance. Inside were 2 spare bedrooms and a master suite that was quite nice. After a quick look around, Ted made his choice. "Bud, this looks perfect. I hope I can rent it month to month, as I think I'll be here for at least 3 months. I'm really sorry, Ted, but the owner prefers a year lease. I think I could negotiate a 6-month lease if the price is reasonable," Bud replied, showing mild surprise. Ted didn't hesitate when Bud mentioned the owner's price, quickly agreeing to a 6-month lease. He also said he wanted to move in right away and would provide a check for the whole term when they returned to the office. Bud agreed, and they wrapped up the details in just a couple of hours. 2 days later, Ted found himself comfortably settled into what he began to see as his dream house. For the first time in a while, he felt at peace and started to think about how to bring clarity to his marriage. He had realized that he could not forgive her or accept her betrayal. Ted knew he wasn't ready to confront her, so he sought a quiet place to sort through his thoughts. He understood that he needed time alone to heal and was not yet prepared to face the challenges ahead. Days passed comfortably, and life felt calm for Ted. He joined a local country club and played golf almost every day, making acquaintances while keeping his connections light. He did become closer to Bud Troop and his wife June, who were kind and whom he saw often. Ted felt fairly content during this time of reflection. He had made up his mind about his marriage being over, and his sadness had lessened surprisingly. He wondered whether he had ever truly loved Barbara, and if not, why that was. His focus shifted to returning home to find the closure he needed. He received emails from his lawyer letting him know that Barbara was challenging the divorce and delaying the process. Ted was warned that a contested divorce could become very complicated. After 2 months in Tucson, he knew he had to plan his return, but he felt stuck, unable to make any decisions just yet. Around this time, Matt Weeks decided to call his fiancée, Anne. "Hi, Anne, it's me. I need you to do something for me. Please contact Barbara Arnold and set up a time for the three of us to meet. No questions right now. Just see if she can meet with us this evening, okay? Thanks." Later, the three friends gathered in Barbara's living room. She had made coffee, which sat untouched on a tray. Matt noticed Barbara's appearance. Despite her distress, she appeared well put together, dressed nicely and wearing makeup. To an outsider, everything seemed almost normal. "Okay, Matt," Barbara began. "What's going on? Anne said you wanted to talk to me about something." Matt paused, choosing his words carefully. "Barbara, even Anne doesn't know why we are here, so I should start from the beginning. I'm pretty sure I know what led to your problems. And no, it's not that Ted found someone else, Barb." Barbara went pale, placing a hand over her heart. She watched as Matt waved his hand, signaling that he wanted to continue. "Think back to the day you found that note. Ted wasn't supposed to be there that morning. He was meant to arrive later. It's clear he came in early. I'm guessing he actually arrived the night before to surprise you. He must have heard Anne and me in the study and thought you were with another man." Both Barbara and Anne gasped. Anne felt deep regret, while Barbara sat stunned, unsure how to respond to this new information. "My God, Barb! I'm so sorry. I never thought I would be in this situation, but Matt might be correct," Anne said, her voice shaking with worry. "Wait, I'm not done yet," Matt said firmly. "I hired someone to find Ted, and they finally did. I know where he is, and I'm going to visit him. He doesn't know I'm coming. Please don't ask me for his location. Just trust me with this. I feel responsible for what happened, and I'd like to make things right." Barbara listened, her heart filled with a mix of hope and fear. Could it be this easy to fix their relationship? Could Matt really bring Ted back? "Matt," Barbara said quietly, "I will do anything you need. I just pray that Ted will listen to you. I don't want to get my hopes too high. I know he can be stubborn, but he respects you. I hope you can reach him." "Matt," she then said, "could you please take this with you to Ted?" She took Ted's wedding ring from around her neck and handed it to him. About 36 hours later, Ted was sitting by the pool enjoying his coffee when the doorbell rang. Surprised, he walked to the door and found Matt Weeks standing there with a small smile. "Hi, Ted. I know you're surprised to see me. Can I come in?" Matt asked. Ted quickly regained his composure and said, "Sure, Matt. This is unexpected. How did you find me?" "It wasn't easy, Ted. It took months. You moved around a lot, but that's not the main point. I'm here for a reason." Ted gave a wry smile. "I think I know why you're here, Matt. Please don't act like a marriage counselor. It won't help. While it's nice to see you, I think you didn't need to come. Barbara and I are done." "No, Ted, I'm not here as a counselor. I just want to share something important with you. Please, just listen for a few minutes, okay?" "Okay, Matt. Let's go into the living room. Would you like something to drink or eat?" Matt shook his head. "I just want to get this over with." He shared what he had learned from Barbara. It didn't take long. After he finished, he looked at Ted closely. Ted sat there in shock. "Are you serious, Matt?" he asked, his voice rising. I went through all of this because you and Anne were in the same place? My whole life turned upside down because of a misunderstanding. Ted suddenly stood up, looking agitated. Did Barbara ask you to do this? This sounds like something she would think of. I can't believe you went along with her. I expected better from you. He was confused. Matt stood up too and held Ted's shoulders. You were home that night, and you did hear Anne and me, didn't you? You thought Barbara was with someone else, and that's why you left. I'm telling you the truth. I promise it's honest. Ted sank back in his chair, feeling overwhelmed. He tried to understand what Matt had just said. Oh no, he whispered. What have I done? I could have handled this better. Why didn't I just ask? All of this could have been avoided. How can I face Barbara? She must think the worst of me. Ted sat with his head in his hands, struggling to come to terms with everything. Ted, Matt said gently, don't worry about Barbara being upset. When I left, she wanted you to come back. She cares about you, Ted. She gave me this to give back to you. He held out Ted's wedding ring. Ted stared at it, feeling frozen. Slowly, he took the ring and absent-mindedly put it back on his finger, where it had been for so many years. The two men spent the rest of the day talking deeply and sitting in silence. Ted was grateful for Matt. It was nice to have someone to talk to. As night fell, Matt got up from his chair and said, Ted, it's late. I have a room near the airport and my flight leaves early. I need to call a cab. Forget the cab, Matt. I'll drive you. It's not far, and it'll give me some fresh air. The drive was quick, but Matt hesitated before getting out of the car. Ted, what should I tell Barbara? She knows I'm here with you. Ted thought for a moment. Tell her I need to finish some things here and that I'll come back sometime next week. I should arrive by the end of next week, and when I do, we'll sit down and talk. It's something I should have done long ago, Ted said, feeling regret. He watched Matt enter the hotel for a moment. 2 days later, Ted felt restless. His anxiety and eagerness to leave became too much. He called the airline and booked an evening flight. After packing a small bag, he got to the airport with time to spare, fidgeting during the flight. Luckily, he didn't have anyone sitting next to him. It was well after 10 p.m. when the plane landed, and he made his way to the rental car waiting for him. His thoughts were scattered. He decided to see how things would go with Barbara and hoped they could mend their lives together. He pulled into his driveway around 11 o'clock and noticed the house was dark. He felt relieved to see a dim light in the master bedroom. Barbara was still awake. Using his key, he quietly entered the house. As he moved to the stairs, he paused when he heard voices coming from the second floor. A chill ran through him as he silently climbed the stairs. The master bedroom door was only slightly open, so he couldn't see inside, but he heard the conversation clearly. Barbara, I keep saying this. Ted will be back next week, and we need to be careful for a while. I want to fix my marriage. It's not going to be easy for me, he replied. Then find a way to handle it, she said with a light laugh. I've told you many times. I love my husband, and I don't want to hurt my marriage. If you love him, why do you stray? You've done this before. There was a short pause. I've wondered about that, too. I guess it's the excitement of something new. It's just a different experience. And Ted doesn't give you that? Is he that bad? Ted's a good person, she said sharply. It's just different. With him, it's caring love, but with someone else, it's more exciting. Now let's stop talking about it. Ted listened and then turned away. He walked down the stairs and headed to the front door. He paused for a moment and then entered the kitchen. He took off his wedding ring and placed it in the center of the table. He looked at it for a moment, then turned and left the house, not bothering to close the door behind him. Before moving on to the second story, please let me know your opinion. Do you like the story long or short, a series or separate parts? The comments section is always welcome, and don't forget to let me know which of these two stories you like better. I was 48 years old, sitting in my office with a view of the blue Pacific Ocean, thinking about whether to accept an offer from my company. If I took it, I would make around $24 million. I would have more money than I ever thought possible. I could buy what I wanted and do what I pleased. So why did I feel so empty inside? I was successful at work, but my personal life felt completely wrong. My name is Jerry Ford, but just call me Jerry, not Gerald. I grew up in a working-class family and had a tough time in high school. I admit I found it pretty boring. I think I was the only student my guidance counselor suggested should quit and get a job. I guess she got tired of seeing me all the time. I know I was a handful. Somehow I graduated high school, though I suspect they just wanted me gone. The Vietnam War was happening, and many people were against it, but I wanted to make a difference. I joined the Army for 3 years. My dad, an electrician, thought the military would help me grow up and learn a skill. Surprisingly, I did well in basic training. For some reason, I liked the routine, the physical challenges, and the focus it required. I ended up finishing at the top of my unit and decided to volunteer for Ranger training. I spent the next 2 months at Fort Benning, Georgia, getting ready for the realities of Vietnam. I have to say, I wasn't a superhero, just under 6 feet and about 170 pounds. But the training gave me the skills I needed. 2 months later, I found myself in Vietnam, which was nothing like my hometown. If people ever wanted to clean up the world, Vietnam would definitely need it. I was there for over a year and a half until I got hurt by shrapnel, which damaged a few vertebrae and caused other issues. After a couple of months in a veterans hospital, I was discharged. Despite my health concerns, I was grateful I could move on with life. At 20, out of the Army and still without many skills, except handling tough situations, I came back home unsure of what to do next. My dad looked into counseling and career help for veterans at Drexel University, provided by the VA. I decided to give it a try. An appointment was set up, and I spent the entire day being tested and interviewed. I remember the psychologist, Dr. Cypress, who asked me to call him Al. To keep it short, the tests showed I had a talent for technical work, and he encouraged me to go to college and study engineering. I could hardly believe it, but his words motivated me. He arranged a meeting with the dean of the School of Engineering at Drexel, and soon enough, I was enrolled. My dad was excited, and my mom felt proud of my success. Since my dad worked as an electrician, I decided to study electrical engineering. Around the same time, I received a call from Ben Klein, a friend from my time in Vietnam. "Hey, Jerry, it's Ben. I'm out of the Army." "Wow, Ben, great to hear from you. How did you get out early? Where are you now?" "I lost a leg, Jerry. I stepped on a mine, can you believe that? But it's okay. I have a prosthetic leg and I get around well. I called your folks and they gave me your number. I'm in California and guess what I got into Caltech? I'm going to study architecture and fulfill my dream." I felt so happy. Ben was one of the smartest people I knew, and I always believed in him. "Ben, that's wonderful. I'm really happy for you. Did my folks tell you what I'm doing? Can you imagine us? Professionals, you an engineer and me an architect?" We both laughed together. We talked for another half hour, promising to stay in touch. I sat quietly for a moment, thinking about what Ben had said. Life is unpredictable, I thought. I didn't want to travel to school from home, and since I had the GI Bill, a small pension from the Army, and the savings my folks had from what I sent home each month, I could afford a small studio near school. I'm exaggerating a bit when I call it an apartment. It was really just one room that had my bed, a couple of chairs, an old sofa, and a tiny kitchen. It even had a small bathroom. But for me, it was fine. I had space for my desk and a second-hand computer, and I spent as much time as I could studying. I knew this was my chance. If I didn't succeed, my future would look tough. I didn't need a car. I could walk to class and take the streetcar to visit my family. The first 2 years flew by, and I was surprised I didn't fail any of my midterm exams. In fact, I did quite well. I was determined to become an engineer, so I studied hard, which didn't leave much time for socializing. I made some casual friends in my classes, and we would occasionally get together for meals or to hang out. One Friday, my friend Carl told me about a gathering at a sorority at Penn, just a few blocks away, and he convinced me to join him. I thought, why not? It was the weekend, and I was mostly caught up. That night changed everything for me. I met Kimberly. I was surprised by her style, the trendy clothes, and her friendly attitude. It was obvious that she came from a different background. At first, I judged her unfairly and realized that wasn't right. A sudden tap on my shoulder made me turn around, and there was Kimberly, looking quite serious. "Why do you look down on us? Do you think we're just spoiled kids?" I was taken aback, but she continued, "It's silly to judge people without knowing them." With that, she walked away, leaving me confused and a bit shocked. Carl then came over and laughed lightly. "Looks like you just met Kim Van Horn. She's a nice person, right?" he said, clearly enjoying my reaction. "Come on, Jerry. I think you've had enough for tonight. Let's go." We stopped at a local place for a couple of drinks, and I took the chance to ask him about her. "What's up with her?" "I didn't say anything to provoke that," I complained. Carl chuckled. "That's just Kim. She's really sensitive about how people see her. She hates it when others assume she has no goals just because of her background. She's my girlfriend's best friend, and I've learned to get along with her. Treat her well and she'll be fine. She gets upset when she feels judged." "Your girlfriend? I didn't see you with anyone," I said, confused. "She's away for the weekend with family. She'll be back on Sunday," Carl answered. "Why not come back with me to the sorority house on Sunday and apologize to Kim? You'll see she's a great person and I think you'll like her." I thought about Carl's idea. I was curious. Kim did have a strong presence. I decided I wanted to get to know her better, so I agreed to go with Carl on Sunday. We arrived at the sorority house around noon. I was introduced to Kim and then to Carol, Carl's girlfriend. It was funny as Kim and I both tried to apologize for Friday at the same time. Eventually, I said sorry for being thoughtless, and she apologized for being so direct. After that, we went to a nearby pizza place for lunch and drinks. I really enjoyed our time together and felt drawn to her joyful personality and laughter. She was smart and very down-to-earth. I liked her. No, I realized I was quite taken with her. In the months that followed, we dated casually. We met up often, watched movies, or grabbed meals together. She didn't come to my place and didn't suggest I visit her at the sorority house. We shared fun moments at the movies or in other friendly settings, but that was it. By the end of our junior year, we both started to notice that something special was growing between us. We often thought about each other, and it felt like we were only dating each other. In May, on a warm and pleasant evening, we planned to meet for a light dinner, with no specific plans afterward. I remember that evening clearly. I walked to Kim's sorority house and stopped, amazed by how beautiful she looked. She had put on some makeup, which was rare for her, and she wore a soft top and a skirt. Her outfit was nice, but not too revealing. I was used to seeing her in a blouse and jeans, so I was pleasantly surprised. She looked wonderful, and I felt an unexpected thrill. I realized again how charming Kim was. Her eyes sparkled with joy as she took my arm, guiding me down the sidewalk. "Close your mouth, Jerry. You've seen me in a skirt before," she joked. "I just can't believe how beautiful you are," I replied a little awkwardly. Smooth talking isn't my strength. She blushed slightly and held onto my arm tightly. We ate outside at a nearby restaurant, which was more casual than fancy. There were only a few tables outside, and we took one of them. After we finished eating, Kim looked at me and asked, "Jerry, why have you never invited me to see your apartment?" I was surprised. "I did, Kim, a few months ago. You said it wasn't exactly proper," I replied with a playful smile. She chuckled and said, "Well, I bet it's a typical bachelor place. A bit messy." Actually, it wasn't. I had learned to keep my space neat. Although my place might have been simple, it was clean and organized. I asked Kim if she wanted to see it, and she said yes, so we walked there, enjoying the gentle evening breeze. I felt a mix of emotions. Why did Kim want to see my place now? I had many questions, but I decided to keep them to myself and see where the night would go. Kim seemed a bit anxious but lively, chatting about different things and glancing at me with excitement. I noticed her nervousness and tried to stay calm. I reached for her hand as we walked, which seemed to help her relax. "Wow, Jerry, I'm impressed," Kim said as she looked around my simple home. "Everything is tidy, I should have guessed. You're that kind of guy." "That's a good thing, right?" I asked, curious about her reaction. "Yes," she replied softly. "Jerry, that's really good." Then she gently touched my cheek, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "Jerry," she asked, "do you love me?" I paused, realizing I had never really shared my feelings. We had grown close, but this conversation was new. I embraced her and whispered, "Sweetheart, I love you with all my heart." "I should have told you that months ago." She sighed and exhaled slowly. "Oh, Jerry, I love you too, more than you'll ever know." Our bond grew stronger in that gentle moment, and she playfully asked me to keep quiet about it. Kim stood in front of me, moving with a grace that only she seemed to understand. Her movements captivated me, and I felt lost in the beauty of the moment. The energy in the room felt alive as our eyes met, deepening our connection. Her confidence filled the space between us. I felt a warmth as we enjoyed the sweet tension of the evening, both of us recognizing our feelings without needing to say anything more. I started feeling uneasy but knew there was no turning back. The meeting was set for Sunday, just 2 days away. I was committed to it. I had learned about Kim's family. They were well known among influential people. Bernard Van Horn owned a major construction company in southeast Pennsylvania and had a great fortune, while his wife, Catherine Van Horn, came from a respected Boston family with deep roots. I felt out of place, but I had to push through. My dad sent the car to pick us up. A black Lincoln Town car, of course, the best for his princess. I wasn't thrilled, and Kim noticed. She just smiled and reassured me. Soon, the car pulled into a long driveway that led to the house. It was a large, gray stone colonial with a big garage nearby. The grounds looked pristine, clearly taken care of by professionals. Kim led me inside, calling for her parents. When they appeared in the foyer, everything changed. They welcomed me as if I were family. Their kindness surprised me, but I sensed a slight caution in Catherine's demeanor. She was friendly and polite, yet there was a coolness beneath her smile. She looked to be in her mid-40s, perhaps what Kim would resemble in 20 years. Bernard, or Bernie as he wanted me to call him, was quite different. Around 50, tall and distinguished, he was wealthy yet relaxed. I'd heard stories about him. He could be strict if needed, but he also had a welcoming side. For some reason, he took an immediate liking to me, asking about my background and studies. As we left, he said, "Jerry, I'm impressed with you. Keep up the good work. I could always use a good engineer." Then he chuckled and gave me a friendly pat on the back. "See, I told you not to worry. They loved you," Kim said, smiling as we got back into the car. I breathed a sigh of relief that it was over, but one thought stayed in my mind now it was Kim's turn to meet my family. I smiled a little, thinking about how different my parents' simple South Philly home was from the fancy place I had just visited. I believed my parents would welcome Kim with open arms, but I hoped she would see the differences in our backgrounds. Kim's visit to meet my parents went better than I expected. Her eyes lit up when she saw our small row house for the first time. It was a new experience for her, and she handled it well. Sometimes, I saw a quick look in her eyes that made me curious. Was she uncomfortable? I knew Kim wouldn't judge anyone based on their money. She and my mom quickly bonded, and soon they were in the kitchen as my mom taught her a recipe for my favorite pot roast. I couldn't help but chuckle, wondering if Kim could actually cook it. Outside, my dad and I were sitting on the steps. He turned to me and said, "Jerry, Kim seems like a really nice girl, and she clearly cares for you. I hope you both will be happy." There was a hint of worry in his voice, and I looked at him with curiosity. In a serious tone, he continued, "You need to understand that Kim has always lived comfortably. She might expect a similar life with you. Engineering can pay well, but I'm not sure it will be enough for her. I could be mistaken, but it's something to think about." He patted my shoulder and led me back inside. When we were all together in the living room, my dad said, "Jerry, Kim, let's raise a glass to your happiness. May your life together be long and joyful. Also, we've sold the house and are moving to Florida. We found a small home on the West Coast, and I have a part-time job lined up. We're looking forward to escaping these cold winters." He lifted his glass while I sat there in amazement. Once I collected myself, I laughed and wished them luck on their new journey. I suggested they keep that extra bedroom ready for Kim and me when we came to visit. I noticed the expression in Kim's eyes, but brushed it aside. I was happy for my parents. Kim decided that since her parents were paying for her living expenses and I was paying for my small apartment, we could combine our money and find a better place nearby. It made sense, so that's what we did. We found a nice apartment not too far from where I was living. Naturally, Kim insisted she needed a car for school, so her father got her a BMW. It seemed like a reasonable request, so I didn't mind. Our senior year went smoothly. Kim was busy with her studies and wedding plans. Since I wasn't involved in either, I focused on my schoolwork and kept my grades up. It was funny that, with my schoolwork, Kim's studies, and her wedding planning with her mom, We actually had less time together than we did before living together. About 2 months before graduation, something unsettling happened. Kim came home with exciting news while I was at the computer. "Jerry, I got the job. I start next week. It will be 2 nights to start, but if things go well, I'll have a full-time position after I graduate. Isn't that wonderful?" This was all new to me, and I wanted to know more. She explained that she would work for a big publishing house in the city as a trial assistant editor. Once she graduated, she would take on full-time duties in that role. I shared some worries. "Kim, we don't see each other much now. It feels like we're strangers in the same place. This will make it harder." "I understand, Jer, but this is a great chance. Please be happy for me, honey. It's what I've always wanted," she said with hope in her eyes. So I kept my thoughts to myself. How could I be upset over her success? I forced a smile and hugged her tightly. "You'll do great. They won't miss your talent for long." She laughed happily and danced around the apartment while I smiled, feeling a bit uneasy inside. In the end, it worked out pretty well. Kim spent a few evenings at Crown Publishing during the week when I had late classes, so we didn't miss too much time together, at least not more than usual. The semester ended quickly, and before I knew it, the wedding day arrived. She was to be a June bride. I invited just a few friends from school, and my parents came up from Florida. I tried to get Ben Klein to visit from California, but he had finals and couldn't make it. It felt strange. With over 200 guests at the event in one of the fanciest hotels, only a handful were my friends and family. I moved through the day in a bit of a blur, letting everything happen around me. One moment that stood out was my talk with Bernie, Kim's father. Later in the evening, he took me aside into a room next to the ballroom. It looked like a study with comfy chairs and lots of books. I wondered what the hotel used it for. "Jerry," he began, "I know you're looking for a job, but I want you to seriously think about working for me. I need help in my technical department, and I'd like you to train with Don, our head electrical engineer. This is a real job with chances to grow. Being my son-in-law won't change how the team sees you, and I'll offer you a fair salary," he said with a warm smile. I understood this was a great chance for me, and that it wasn't just a favor. I would give my best, and Bernie knew that. He respected my desire to succeed on my own. We shook hands to confirm our agreement. My parents gave us a lovely silver service for 12, which I knew took effort on their part. My in-laws offered us a 10-day vacation in Jamaica. I felt a little uncomfortable, but realized it would be unkind to say no. I started to feel worried about how much the Van Horns would affect my relationship with Kim. We had talked about it before, and she knew I wanted us to be independent. Even though she often brushed off my worries, I felt they were important. Our biggest disagreement happened when we talked about where to live after graduation and our wedding. Kim wanted us to buy an apartment in a tall building in the city, close to her job and the Van Horn office where I would work. I tried to explain that we couldn't afford that kind of expense and suggested renting a nice apartment in the town center. We could save up and look for something to buy later. Kim was upset that I didn't want help from her parents. I told her firmly that we would not rely on them for money. We would either make it on our own or not at all. Kim saw how serious I was and, after some hesitation, agreed. I felt like I won the argument, but at what cost? We found a nice 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment not far from our jobs. Kim drove her car, and I could take a streetcar that dropped me off at work in 10 minutes. It was very convenient. We borrowed money for furniture, but I managed to help Kim keep her spending in check, and soon our place was nicely furnished. Bernie kept his promise. My job was challenging. I met Don Malone, a big Irishman with white hair. He had a wealth of knowledge about engineering that far exceeded what I learned in college. He was rough around the edges, but he took me under his wing and taught me a lot. I started to see that finishing my college program was just the beginning of my career. We worked on performance requirements, developed maintenance plans, designed layouts, and estimated costs for construction projects. It was an excellent training program, and I adapted quickly. Even though our workday ended at 5, I often stayed until 6 or later, trying to learn as much as I could. Kim was also very dedicated to her job. She loved working with new authors and creating projects to bring new works to the audience. After 2 years, she became a full editor and started to earn good money. We tried to save as much as we could for our future home. Since we weren't planning to have children, we intended to buy an apartment in one of the fancy high-rises in the city, which Kim had wanted from the start. However, I noticed that instead of enjoying our new home, Kim kept criticizing it, even calling it inadequate. It was clear she wouldn't be happy until we had a place that she felt was suitable for her. This attitude upset me, and it started to put a strain on our relationship. I kept in touch with Ben Klein. He kept asking me to move to California, but I was happy where I was. I knew I couldn't convince Kim to go either. I tried to show him that there was no point in pushing me, but he would mention it from time to time. It made me chuckle. He had a funny personality. It all began with a phone call one Friday evening. I had quietly arranged a special night to celebrate our second wedding anniversary. I had made reservations at one of the fanciest restaurants in town, had 24 roses delivered, and bought a little velvet box with 2 diamond earrings for Kim. I wondered if she thought I had forgotten about our special day since she hadn't said a word about it. The phone ringing pulled me from my daydream. Jerry? It was Kim. I'm really sorry, but I might be late tonight. We have a lot to do for Paul's new book launch, and I'll be here for a few more hours. I'll grab something to eat and see you around 10, she said quickly. Before I could reply, she hung up. I sat there, holding the phone, staring at the roses. Did she even remember our anniversary? I started to worry if her job mattered more to her than our marriage. I thought back over the last year. We had both been so focused on work that we had not paid enough attention to what mattered most, our marriage. It felt like we were just friends living together. Recently, Kim had been either working or thinking about work. Once she started talking about Paul Lavelle's new book, it was all she could talk about. Her excitement was contagious, and I was glad for her, even though I grew tired of hearing how great Paul was. I had met him a couple of times and didn't think much of him. He was tall and good-looking, but I sensed he thought a lot of himself. Weeks ago, I met him at a gathering at the Rittenhouse Hotel. Kim was wearing a lovely dress that caught my attention, but I felt a bit uneasy about it. As soon as we arrived, she took me over to Paul. He shook my hand too hard, trying to show he was important. I soon saw that he wasn't very polite. His face changed when I shook back firmly, and he quickly pulled his hand away. "Hi, Kim," he said with a hint of sarcasm. "So this is the engineer," he laughed. I looked at Kim and saw her discomfort as she turned away quickly. Had she talked about me and my work with him? Did she find it funny? The evening turned awkward after that. I hardly saw Kim again. She seemed to stay by Lavelle's side the whole night. His eyes would sometimes meet mine, and he placed his arm around Kim, almost daring me to say something. Strangely, a week later, she stopped talking about the project and Paul. Whenever I brought him up, Kim quickly changed the subject. It felt odd, and I began to feel uneasy, a small worry growing inside me. I tried to laugh it off and told myself not to think too much, but that didn't help. Days went by, and life felt routine. Kim seemed distant, and her attention to me and our relationship felt automatic. Had she even noticed that we hadn't been close in weeks? About a week before our anniversary, I decided to leave work on time and head to Crown Publishing. I wanted to take Kim out for dinner, hoping we could talk about spending more time together, maybe putting our jobs aside for a change. Somehow, I ended up on the executive floor instead of the one below. As I stepped off the elevator, I saw James Frost, the executive vice president. He approached with a smile. "Jerry, good to see you. It's been a while," he said, giving my shoulder a light tap. "Hi, Jim," I replied. "I obviously took the wrong floor. I'm here to take my wife to dinner if she isn't busy with the Lavelle project." "Oh, no, that's finished now. Paul is still in the VIP apartment upstairs, but the book is at the printers and everything is back to normal. Go get Kim. She deserves a nice dinner." He smiled and continued down the hall. I stood there for a moment, thinking, then took the stairs down to the right floor. I found Kim in the hall. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "Jerry, what are you doing here?" she asked. "Hi, Kim," I said gently. "I thought we could have dinner out tonight. It's been a while and we could use some time together." I noticed her annoyance. "I can't, Jer. You know how busy I am with Paul's novel. Please be patient. This will be over soon, I promise. Our lives will get back to normal. I'll try to get home earlier tonight." She gave me a quick pat on the cheek before going back into her office. I stood there for a moment, then turned and left. I saw it was almost 11 p.m. I guessed that Kim's promise to be home by 10 was just like her other words. I threw the roses I brought into the trash, vase and all. I put the earrings in my desk drawer. That night, I lay in bed awake, wondering where my life was headed. It was almost 1 a.m. when I heard the front door open. It didn't take long for Kim to come in and settle next to me. She smelled fresh, like she had just showered. I pretended to sleep. At that moment, I became convinced that she was involved with Lavelle. I should have seen it earlier, but I guess I didn't want to admit it. I barely slept that night. I didn't have clear proof of her unfaithfulness, but I didn't need any. There was no one to convince, and we had nothing much to divide. The divorce would be simple. Still, I didn't want to rush things. I wanted her actions to be known. I felt a bit bitter. I wanted everyone to see what she had done. I lay there thinking back to when we first met, to when we first lived together. I had loved Kim, actually. I had adored her. Where had she gone? Tears filled my eyes, dampening my cheeks and my pillow. I woke up very early the next morning. It was Saturday, but I went to the office. I wanted a place where I could be alone. I needed time to think and decide what to do next. I knew my marriage was ending, but I wanted to control the process. I needed some proof of my wife's unfaithfulness. I understood it might be hard to find, but I had a plan. I found a private investigation firm next to Van Horn Construction. I called and set an appointment with Marge DeMarco, one of the owners, for that morning. I took the elevator to the 8th floor and opened the door to the office suite. A tall woman in her 50s waved to me from across the reception area and motioned for me to come in. "I believe you're Jerry Ford. I'm Marge DeMarco," she said, offering a firm handshake. She pointed to a chair as she moved behind her desk. "I'm lucky to have you here," she said. "Normally no one is around on weekends unless there's something urgent. Please, relax and let me know how we can help you." I shared my concerns and provided all the details I had. When I mentioned the VIP apartment at the publishing house, her expression changed. "Jerry?" she said carefully, asking if she could call me that. I nodded. "From what you've told me, I think your concerns are reasonable. The problem is the VIP apartment. If your wife and this author meet there, it will be hard for us to find any proof. Any evidence we get could be considered illegal and wouldn't hold up in court." I interrupted her. "Marge, I don't care about the legal side of things. I just want to know the truth. I'm sure my wife has been unfaithful. I just need that confirmed." She hesitated, looking at me with what seemed like sympathy. "All right, Jerry. Give us a couple of weeks and we'll do our best to find out what we can. This might be tough, so be prepared in case we can't get the information you want. Here's a packet with details about our company, our fees, and a copy of the standard contract. Please review it, sign the contract, and send it back with a payment. We'll start on Monday and get back to you as soon as possible." "Sure." I nodded, shook her hand, and then left. It was almost noon, and I decided to go home. I felt a little better. At least I had taken some action. I no longer felt like a victim. When I entered our apartment, I saw Kim standing by the kitchen doorway with a serious look. "Jerry, where did you go? Do you remember it's our anniversary today? Did you get me a card or do something special?" I paused and looked at her. "Kimberly," I said calmly. "Today is the 11th. Our anniversary was yesterday. The roses I bought for you are outside in the trash and I had to cancel our dinner plans. You might find your present on my desk. I guess what you were doing last night was more important since it lasted until almost 1 a.m. She looked surprised, and her eyes moved around nervously, avoiding mine. She seemed pale, but I could tell she was trying to pull herself together. "I'm sorry, Jer," she finally said, sitting on the sofa and shaking her head. "I don't know what's happening half the time. This campaign has really stressed me out." She looked at me, hoping I would understand. "It's over, Jerry. The campaign is finally done. Please, let's try to forget the past few months and focus on our marriage." Yeah, as if I could just forget. What she didn't realize was that I knew about the project ending long before. Her guilt was clear. I didn't want to dwell on it, but the tension lingered, and we were just going through the motions. Yet there were no late-night meetings. Kim was home by 5 or a little after every evening. It seemed her work with Lavelle was finished. Honestly, I didn't care. The harm was already done. I could see Kim was making a real effort to fix our marriage. I thought I noticed some regret from her now and then. But to me, it was too late. Was I being too proud or stubborn? Should I have tried harder to save our marriage? Maybe, but I couldn't shake off the hurt from her actions. The trust that is vital in a marriage was gone. How could I trust her again? How could I forget? Forgiving her felt impossible, and that knowledge meant the end for us. Our marriage had become a performance. A few days later, I received a call from Ben Klein. We had stayed in touch and would check in with each other now and then. "Jerry, have you thought more about my suggestion of moving out here? There are many opportunities and we could really use another good electrical engineer." Ben had been encouraging me to move for a while. Maybe I should consider it now. I had brushed off the idea before. "It's something to think about, Ben. I'm not sure right now, but maybe we can discuss it again later, okay?" I left it open-ended. Ben felt a spark of excitement, but I reminded him it was only a cautious maybe. A few days later, Marge DeMarco called me at work and asked to meet. I sat at her desk and politely declined a drink. Marge started, "Jerry, I have some news, but I'm not sure you'll like it. I called you in early before the 2 weeks I mentioned because we're stuck. Our investigation hasn't found anything that supports your concerns. That's why I don't have a full report ready. If I had to summarize what we found, it would be very little, most of it harmless. So, I'm refunding part of our fee. The only notable info I have is about Paul Lavelle. He seems to have a history with women. There have been 3 complaints about him, all settled outside of court, and it looks like he might be behind at least 2 divorces. He seems to be quite a character. I wish we could share more." I felt let down, but accepted it. I didn't expect much success. All right, I would go on without the proof I wanted. I called John Kramer, an attorney I knew a bit, but found out he was out of town and would be back in about 10 days. I made an appointment to see him. It was time to move ahead. In the meantime, Kim and I danced around each other. Then, a couple of days before my meeting with Kramer, I returned home from work, hung my jacket on a chair, and Kim rushed in, out of breath and clearly upset. Her laughter was uneven, and she looked almost frantic. "Jerry, please sit down. We need to talk," she said quickly. "I know we didn't want kids, but I'm pregnant. We're going to be parents, Jerry. This can be amazing. Please don't be angry. Be happy for us," she said, her face showing worry. I was shocked and speechless at first. Then the irony of it hit me. Kim had often forgotten her birth control pills, and now she was expecting a baby. I felt betrayed, as it seemed she was saying that the child was mine. I was filled with anger and sadness, emotions washing over me. A deep sense of loss nearly swallowed me, leaving me feeling hollow. It was as if something inside me had vanished, and I was overwhelmed with emptiness. I just wanted it all to end. "I'll leave as soon as I pack a few things. I can get the rest later," I said, feeling numb. Kim sat quietly, tears gathering in her eyes. It was clear she understood how serious this was. "I'm so sorry, Jerry. You don't know how sorry I am." I couldn't help but think about how everything had gone wrong. "Why, Kim, did our marriage mean so little to you?" I asked gently. She looked at me, regret filling her eyes. "I've asked myself that over and over. Maybe it was about the thrill of being around famous people. I don't have any excuses." I felt weak and foolish for getting caught up in that lifestyle. I didn't understand the effects of my choices until it was too late. Tears rolled down her face. "I'm really sorry for lying to you about the baby. I was scared. You didn't deserve any of this." She looked down at her lap. "Can we fix this?" she asked softly, already knowing the answer. I cut her off. "No. I have a meeting with John Kramer. You should talk to a lawyer. We can divide everything we have. The divorce should be simple." I went into the bedroom, packed a bag, and headed for the door. Kim stayed seated, her head down and quietly crying. I walked out. One of the hardest talks I had was with Bernie Van Horn. I had to tell him that I was divorcing his daughter and leaving my job. "Jerry, why? I thought of you like family. Why are you doing this?" Bernie's eyes were wet with tears, making my throat feel tight. "Bernie, I can't share the details, I really can't. I think Kim will tell you everything. I have to do this, and I truly appreciate everything you've done for me. It hurts to leave like this," I said, trying to hold back my feelings. Understanding showed in Bernie's eyes. He came over and put a hand on my shoulder. "Okay, Jerry. You don't have to say more. Just take care of yourself. Promise me you'll let me help you when you need it." I nodded and left his office. I spent the next week in a hotel trying to understand everything. After reviewing my situation, I realized there was nothing left for me. I started the divorce process, knowing it wouldn't be challenged. With my past behind me and my family moved to Florida, I decided to call Ben Klein. Within a week, I was on a flight to Los Angeles. Ben sent my resume to his company, and I got a job just a few days after arriving in Los Angeles. I stayed with Ben and his wife, Rachel, for a couple of weeks until I found an apartment near my work. Rachel made me feel at home and became a good friend. As the weeks went by, I threw myself into work, which helped me forget some of the pain I felt. Nights were tough, filled with dark thoughts and regrets about my marriage. I found myself coping in unhealthy ways, feeling angry and lost. I missed my wife, not who she became, but who I had loved. I struggled with whether Kim's choices were partly my fault, if I should have tried harder, and if I was weak for leaving. After much thinking, I accepted that I didn't have the strength to fix our problems. I couldn't forgive her actions, and I knew I couldn't accept the child a constant reminder of what had happened. What really helped me stay stable was the support and friendship I got from Ben and Rachel. They often encouraged me to spend weekends at their house, go camping, or meet new people. I usually skipped the blind dates, but I spent a lot of time with them at home. Relaxing by the pool in the warm sun helped clear my mind. It also let me enjoy the peaceful atmosphere. Over time, I occasionally received calls from Bernie Van Horn. He was thoughtful enough to skip talking about Kim and seemed truly interested in how I was doing. Oddly, I also got calls now and then from Catherine Van Horn, who was always warm and friendly on the phone. I appreciated their efforts to stay in touch. But then, things changed at the Klein's home. Ben and Rachel kept inviting me over every weekend, and soon it felt like a second home. We became so close that it felt like family. I particularly enjoyed their backyard with the pool and patio. As time went on, Ben and Rachel began to show concern about my lack of interest in dating. It wasn't that I wanted to stay single forever, I just wasn't ready for a relationship. Maybe the hurt from my marriage had left deeper marks than I realized. I felt the usual emotions, but I had learned to cope on my own. Rachel's clothing became more casual, and sometimes I found myself in awkward situations like running into her in the hallway when she was less dressed. It started to feel strange. Despite it all, I never crossed any boundaries. I respected Rachel and Ben too much for that. Then, one weekend, something happened that made things more uncomfortable. Ben went to the store, and I offered to go, but he insisted I stay. When I came out of the bathroom, I saw Rachel walking down the hall in a short robe. She asked me to follow her outside to the patio for a talk. "Jerry," she said softly, "you have to stop shutting yourself away from the world. You've been through a lot, but you can't let that decide your future. You're still here. You still matter." She sat down, pulled her robe close, and looked at me with real concern. "You have people who care about you. We just wanted to help you see that. Sometimes when someone feels lost, they need a push something to wake them up. We just want you to find yourself again." I sat quietly, feeling overwhelmed by the emotion of the moment. Despite the awkwardness earlier, I understood her message. It wasn't about anything more than helping a friend move forward. Rachel stood up, adjusted her robe, and smiled kindly. "Don't let your past hold you back. You deserve happiness, Jerry. You really do." She sat down again and looked at me calmly. "Okay, Jerry. Now it's your turn to say something. I hope that I didn't surprise you too much and that you know we did this because we care about you." She seemed a bit unsure now. "Wow, Rach," I murmured. "That's quite intense, to say the least. What is Ben going to think about this?" I worried. Rachel smiled at me. "Don't worry, Jer. Ben knows what I wanted to do, and he agreed. He thought it might work, too." "Jerry, Ben trusts you completely and feels the same about me. Don't overthink what Ben feels. I want you to think about your own feelings and realize it's time for you to move on." Well, I guess it worked. At least a little. Ben came back to the house later, and he was grinning from ear to ear. I think he could hardly hold back his laughter. His good mood and joy at my embarrassment made me feel better. To defend myself, I started going out on blind dates set up by the Kleins, and surprisingly, many of the women were kind and I had a good time. I knew these were just dates and wouldn't lead to anything serious, and I understood why. I still cared for Kim. I missed her a lot. How do you stop loving someone? I knew it was over. I knew we would never be together again, but it still hurt deep down. This was my struggle. This was the hurdle I had to jump to get my life back on track. I needed to put away the pain of the last few months with Kim. I needed to let go of my feelings for her and move forward. For the first time since I left, I began to do just that. The love and hurt were still there, but I was pushing them deeper inside myself. I tried hard to bury those feelings, and as time passed, I got better at it. Soon, it became just a dull ache that I could manage. I also realized I had to look for new chances if I wanted to get back into the game. I couldn't only rely on Ben and Rachel for blind dates. Eventually, they would run out of women to introduce me to. So I joined a local gym and started exercising. I signed up for a cooking class at the community college. At the very least, it would help my cooking. I even thought about joining a library group, but I reminded myself not to get too ahead of myself. Anyway, Ben and Rachel were pleased that I was moving forward. So I kept busy with work, went out on dates now and then, and settled into a routine I had created for myself. Without realizing it, 2 years had gone by since I moved to the West Coast. Was I happy? I couldn't say I felt like I was going through the motions. I'm sure everyone saw a guy who seemed normal, but I knew I wasn't okay. 2 years later, and I still felt a lingering sadness, not obvious, but deep down, and I understood that the hurt would not fully go away. Then my life changed again. It was Thursday evening when I got a call from my mom. She was crying and struggling to explain. But then it hit me. My dad had suffered a stroke. He had passed away on the way to the hospital. I felt my stomach drop and I felt dizzy. I knew I had to pull myself together. I tried to reassure my mom and told her I would fly out right away. I called Ben and explained what had happened, cutting off his surprised sympathy. I asked him to talk to personnel the next day and set up a leave of absence for me. I packed a few bags, called the airport, and a few hours later, I was on a plane to Tampa. We arrived early the next morning, and I quickly got a rental car at the airport. The sun was coming up, and it looked like it would be a hot day. Before long, I was at the house. A note was waiting for me on the front door from Mrs. Simmons, the neighbor. She had written her phone number and asked me to call her as soon as I got there. I took the note, unlocked the door, and found the house empty. I immediately called the number in my hand. "Mrs. Simmons? This is Jerry Ford. I just found your note." She interrupted me quickly. "Jerry, don't worry, but your mom had a health scare and was taken to the hospital. The doctor says she'll be okay, so try to stay calm. I'll be right over. You just stay put." Her confident voice eased my initial panic. I took a deep breath and waited for her. In about 5 minutes, Mrs. Simmons, or Katie as she wanted me to call her, shared everything she knew. They had been together when my mom started feeling unwell. Katie wasted no time and called for help. When the team arrived, they took my mom to the ER. They found some heart issues and scheduled her for surgery later in the week. As I headed for the door, Katie stopped me. She turned me around and said with calm firmness, "Jerry, just wait for me. Give me 15 minutes to get ready and I'll go with you to the hospital instead of just giving you directions." I paused and felt a bit weak. She wrapped her arms around me and reassured me. "Don't worry, Jerry. Your mom's going to be okay. They handle these situations all the time here. She's only 56 and has many good years to look forward to. She's still young." "Thanks, Katie. I really appreciate your help. I'll wait for you here. I'm truly grateful for everything you've done. You're a good friend," I said, gently pulling away from her comforting hug. I was thankful my mom had such good friends. We arrived at the hospital not long after, and I finally had the chance to see my mom and talk to her. She was still in shock from my dad's passing, and didn't seem to care about getting better or having the surgery. I did my best to persuade her to go through with it. I reminded her that she was all I had and that I needed her. I appealed to her as a mother, and thankfully she agreed. About 5 days later, she had her surgery and came through well. Just 5 days after that, she was home resting and recovering. I was amazed. I thought she would be in the hospital for weeks. A week after the surgery, we began taking short walks around the neighborhood. While my mom was in the hospital, I made all the plans for Dad's funeral. He was buried in a local cemetery, and many friends and neighbors came to pay their respects. There were a lot of people there because he was well-liked. I noticed that most of the attendees were in their 60s and were surprised by Dad's sudden passing. He had just turned 60 himself. I insisted that my mom stay home. She was still recovering from her surgery. I promised her we would visit Dad's grave as soon as she felt strong enough. During that time, I thought about my future. I was unsure about my mom's health, and I didn't want to leave her alone. After talking things over with Ben and Rachel, I decided to quit my job and move closer to my mom. Ben agreed to find a moving company to pack and deliver my things. He handled most of my belongings and arranged to have my car shipped. I was really thankful for Ben and Rachel. Their support was very helpful. I was impressed with how well my mom was recovering. She tired easily and needed to rest in the afternoon, but overall, she was doing great. Living with her and having help from Katie Simmons, who was also recently widowed, was good for her. I realized it was time for me to start looking for a job. My expenses in the past few weeks were low, but I knew I could not wait around forever. Mom was now well enough to take care of herself, and I needed to find work. With this in mind, I sat with her in the living room and shared my plan to search for a job. Mom looked at me and shared her thoughts. "Jerry, I know you have some savings, and I do too. This place is paid for, and my living costs are manageable. I have a great idea. Let's combine our resources, and you can start your own office. Open your own business. I believe in you. I know you can make it work. We can be partners. I understand how to run an office, and you can take care of the technical side. What do you think?" I was surprised. I had never thought about starting my own business. I was an engineer, not a business owner, but the idea was exciting. I saw the potential in it. I knew many small contractors needed engineering work, but did not have their own teams. Could I reach that market? I needed to think about it and talk to some people, starting with Ben Klein. He was excited and encouraged me to go for it. I had nothing to lose. So Mom and I combined our resources, and I opened a small office in town, just the right size for the work I hoped would come in. I also placed ads in local trade publications and made an effort to meet as many local contractors as I could. Slowly, very slowly, some work began to come in. Within a few months, we were just managing to pay our bills. Then, out of the blue, I got a request for a proposal on a mid-sized office building. I worked hard on that proposal, thinking carefully about how much money I could make. I ended up winning the contract. I needed to grow quickly to meet the deadline, but thankfully, I had enough time to get more help and finish the project. To keep it short, business started to pick up, and in the following years, I expanded 3 more times until we took up an entire floor in a fairly new building in town. I felt fortunate. We seemed to be in the right place at the right time, and the work just kept coming. I didn't want to question my good luck. I just accepted it and kept going. In those first couple of years, I was fully focused on growing the business and didn't have much time for socializing. But after about 2 or 3 years, I had enough support to take a breath and reduce my hours. I joined a gym and started exercising. I skipped the cooking classes. I had tried those once and was still not great in the kitchen. Thank goodness for Mom. However, the gym brought an unexpected surprise. I met a woman. Her name was Mary Susan Black. We met in a rather unusual way. I was lifting weights, and about 20 feet away from me was this woman. She was around my age, with short dark hair and a nice figure. Very pretty, she would catch anyone's eye. She was using a machine for her legs, and she looked impressive. That alone would have attracted attention, but something else caught my eye. Her outfit seemed to be ripping a little. I noticed the tear was getting bigger, and I felt it might embarrass her if I didn't say anything. So I decided to walk over. Miss," I said, unsure of myself. "Sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but I think you should know something about your outfit." She stopped her workout and looked at me with a curious smile. "You're not exactly smooth at this," she joked lightly. "Maybe practice how you say hello next time." I leaned in and quietly told her about the problem. Her expression changed as she understood, and she thanked me quickly before rushing off to the locker room. I finished my workout and went on with my day, but I couldn't stop thinking about her. She seemed kind and confident. I told myself maybe it was time to think about dating again. The next day, I didn't see her at the gym, nor did I see her for the rest of the week. I thought the situation was awkward enough that she might have chosen a different gym, which I found disappointing. To my surprise, she came back the following week. I didn't notice her at first, but she approached me as I was finishing up. "Hi," she said shyly. "I'm Mary Black. Thank you for your help that day. It could have been very awkward." I smiled. "You're welcome, and I've been practicing," I joked. "As a reward for my effort, would you have lunch with me today?" "I'm Jerry Ford," I said, offering a handshake. Mary smiled and shook my hand. "I should be treating you to lunch for being so kind." That is how it started. Over the next weeks, we got to know each other better. Mary was 28, a few years younger than me. She had a bright 3-year-old daughter named Stacy. Mary worked in public relations at an ad agency near the gym. After our third date, I met Stacy when Mary invited me to her condo after lunch one Saturday. Stacy was full of energy, looking different from her mother with her blonde hair and sparkling blue eyes. She warmed up to me quickly, which surprised Mary. We formed a bond fast, and I started looking forward to seeing both of them. I liked Mary, and I truly enjoyed our time together. While I didn't feel the same depth I once had with someone from my past, I appreciated Mary for who she was. I was also enchanted by Stacy. It all felt natural and special. Mary was confident and charming, with a strong presence from her job. Yet when we were together, she relaxed. With her daughter, she was caring and gentle. Over time, we started building something meaningful. Interestingly, our relationship didn't involve much physical contact. There were a few sweet moments, but nothing more. I began to wonder about that, until one evening we were at her condo. Stacy was asleep in her room. Mary had made dinner, and I brought a bottle of wine instead of flowers. She looked at me curiously when I handed her the wine, but said nothing. Dinner was quiet and nice. I enjoyed a couple of glasses, and she took a few sips at first. When I asked if it was a bad choice, she reassured me and eventually finished her glass. By the end, we were both laughing and in good spirits. While clearing the table, we bumped into each other and fell onto the couch, still chuckling. Mary leaned in close, took my hand, and looked into my eyes. "Jerry," she said, "sometimes we let our guard down, and that's okay. Not everything has to be perfect." She rested her head on my shoulder. It was a simple, meaningful moment of connection and comfort. Never looking away from me, she fumbled a bit with her clothing and set it aside. I just sat there, gazing at her. Mary then gently brought me closer. I didn't hesitate to show my affection, and I heard her softly express delight. She sat with a gentle smile, inviting me to connect more closely. Mary stood up and took my hand, leading me to her bedroom. We quickly removed my shirt and pants, leaving me in my boxers. I felt a rush of excitement as Mary lay back on the bed, and I moved closer, wanting to connect with her. As I leaned in, she looked at me meaningfully, guiding me gently with her actions. I could sense her eagerness as we grew closer. After a while, we relaxed together, enjoying each other's presence. I wrapped my arms around her, feeling warm and comfortable. The next day was Saturday, and we both wanted to freshen up before Stacy arrived. We didn't want Mary's little girl to see a man in bed with her mother just yet. Mary made a light breakfast for us, and over coffee, she opened up about her feelings from the night before. "Jerry," she began, sounding reflective, "you need to understand that I was a bit forward last night because of the wine. I don't usually drink because it makes me less reserved. I chose to drink last night because I wanted to share my feelings." She looked at me, unsure. "Was I too forward, Jerry? Do you think less of me?" I smiled warmly and pulled her close. "You were just right, more than right, and I think very highly of you. Come, let me show you," I said, taking her hand and leading her back to the bedroom. We continued dating over the following months and grew comfortable with each other. I introduced Mary and Stacy to my mom, who was enjoying her retirement. Mary and my mom got along well, and my mom was especially fond of Stacy, treating her like a granddaughter. Thankfully, Stacy loved her Nana, which was a big plus. Did I love Mary? It was hard to say. I definitely liked her, enjoyed our time together, and cared for Stacy. I felt happy and at ease. We never talked about love or the future. We were content as we were. My life was moving forward, and I started to think about our living arrangements. It seemed impractical to keep moving between houses. After discussing it, we decided it was time to buy a home together. I offered to handle the purchase since my business was doing well, and I wanted to provide for the three of us. We found a lovely ranch in a gated community near the ocean, and I worked out the details of the purchase. 2 months after our first visit, we were fully settled in. Marriage? It never really came up. By mutual understanding, it seemed we were not interested in that right now. Both of us had experienced difficult marriages before, and we wanted to avoid repeating those mistakes. Marriage could be a possibility in the future if either of us changed our minds, but for now, it felt unnecessary. Stacy was calling me Dad, and I was stepping into that role in her life. Life was good. The years went by quickly, each day blending into the next. My company was thriving, gaining a great reputation. I was fortunate to have a strong team to help keep the business growing. I no longer had to spend all my time worrying about staying afloat. Bernie and Kate Van Horn stayed in touch, and although I hadn't seen them since leaving the area, we talked a few times a year. I remained close to Bed and Rachel as well. Mary was doing well, too. She had moved up in her job and was now the director of public relations at her company. It seemed that the higher she climbed, the more hours she had to work, and the more she traveled. It wasn't too extreme. She usually got home around the same time I did. A couple of times a week, she would call and ask me not to wait for dinner because she had meetings. At first, we would pick up Stacy from my mom's house until she was old enough to stay home alone. Mary's travel was manageable. She typically had to meet clients once every couple of months, spending a few days away, but it was nothing to complain about. Our relationship was good. Even after many years together, we managed to keep the connection alive. However, there was one thing. Mary never seemed to find complete fulfillment in our time together. I remember her saying, "Jerry, it's not about you, it's me. I enjoy what we have and feel a strong bond, but it's just not the same. Why worry about it? What we share makes me happy." I thought to myself, if she's happy, then I'm okay with that. Stacy, kind and beautiful, was growing into a wonderful young woman. Not only was she stunning, but she was also very smart. I had watched her blossom over the years, amazed by her change from a little girl into a confident young lady. Now Stacy was almost 20 and finishing her sophomore year at a prestigious university. Around this time, I began to notice that my life was taking a turn. I often wondered if I was being too oblivious, but it felt like Mary had become indifferent, maybe a bit distracted. There was something deeper I couldn't quite understand. At first, I thought it was just my imagination. We had been together almost 17 years, settled into a routine, and became comfortable with our life together. What was different? I started to pay more attention to Mary. I wasn't necessarily more affectionate, thinking I was a decent partner already. While I may not have loved her with fiery passion, I cared about her and wanted her to be happy. I believed we had a solid relationship, that we genuinely cared for each other and wanted the best for one another. But things had changed, and I wasn't quite sure what was different or why. I did notice one thing, though our close moments had become rare. We used to share these moments about 2 or 3 times a week, but now it felt like they had dropped off. I tried to remember the last time we were close, and I realized it had almost been 2 weeks. I recalled a couple of attempts, but Mary responded with, "I'm tired, honey," or "I have my period." Over the months, we had shared those moments only a handful of times. I started to suspect that something wasn't quite right. Having felt this way before, I worried it was happening again. I decided to pay closer attention and hoped I was mistaken. I needed to talk to Mary. If something was bothering her, I wanted to know. After dinner, once everything was cleaned up, I asked her to sit down in the living room. "Mary," I said, "we need to talk. I feel like something's wrong. You seem distant at times, and it feels like I'm not really here. I need to understand what's going on." I kept my tone calm and gentle. She sat there and stared at me. "What are you talking about, Jerry? Are you being paranoid? Are you accusing me of something? Why don't you just let it go?" She then stood up and left the room. I sat there, a bit shocked. I didn't expect that kind of response. Mary had never spoken to me like that before. My eyes widened. Disrespect was the word that came to mind. Over the past few months, I had sensed a lack of respect, maybe even a bit of disdain in her voice. Was I being paranoid? I didn't think so. I wasn't imagining things. I wouldn't wait as I had before. I would find out what was happening. I slept in the guest room that night. The next morning, Mary came out of the bedroom with red eyes, looking sad and sorry. We exchanged kind gestures and promised to avoid conflict. She explained that work had been stressful, and they were having trouble with an important client. Despite her words, I felt something was off and intended to discover the truth. Mary often worked late or traveled for business, but these trips had become more frequent over the past couple of months. I started to piece things together, questioning if there was more going on than I realized. I wanted to confirm my suspicions, whatever they might be. I reached out to some contacts and found a good private investigation agency. I arranged a meeting and shared my concerns with the owner, providing him with the details and a good payment. I decided to let them take care of the investigation. In the weeks that followed, my relationship with Mary felt uneasy. We both sensed that a line had been crossed, and even without direct conflict, a sense of caution hung between us. Our lives went on as usual, with her late nights and work trips unchanged. I waited patiently for the answers I needed. I had a strong sense about the report, and I was right. Knowing the truth did not bring me comfort. The agency gave me proof of her meetings with another man, dining together, holding hands, and spending time together at hotels. I learned his name was Howard Branch, a divorced man with an appealing look. I felt hurt and let down, but surprisingly not crushed like I had been in my last relationship. While my feelings for Mary might not have been intense, I thought we shared some happiness. I was clearly wrong. As I reflected, I wondered if there was something about me that led to this pattern. Cheating happens, but facing it twice in 2 relationships felt too much to handle. I struggled with the idea of whether I could try to fix things with Mary, but deep down, I knew the truth. Forgiveness is hard, and the hurt from betrayal was more than I could take. I talked to my lawyer, who told me that our long time living together made things complicated legally, even without a formal marriage. He suggested I talk to Mary to possibly come to an agreement, which might spare us both more pain. That Friday, after dinner, we sat quietly in the living room, the television on, but mostly ignored. "Mary, how long has this been going on?" I asked gently. She looked up, startled and clearly upset. I saw her eyes fill with tears, but she quickly blinked them away. Taking a deep breath, she softly said, "I'm sorry, Jerry. I hoped you wouldn't find out." "How long?" I pushed. "Do you still care for him?" Her tears came again as she replied, "About 8 months. He just moved to Tampa. I ran into him at the mall." Then, with glistening eyes, she added, "Jerry, he's my ex-husband, Stacy's father." The news hit me hard. "No, I'm Stacy's father," I responded, stunned by the realization. She recoiled at my words, explaining, "I know you're her father. I just meant he is her biological father." "Do you still care for him?" I asked, lowering my voice to stay calm. "I don't know," she admitted. "I never meant for this to happen. It was a mistake from the start, but I couldn't say no to him. It felt like it did when we first met, and I knew he wasn't right for me." I could feel her emotional struggle, and even though I was angry, I felt a little sympathy. I realized everything had changed between us. My frustration with her dishonesty and disrespect grew. I knew I deserved more. Fine. Maybe I was feeling a bit sorry for myself, but it didn't seem fair. Not everything in life is fair. "I'm sleeping in the guest room tonight, Mary," I said flatly. "I would appreciate it if you could find a new place soon. We can just tell people that we grew apart and decided to move on. People like my mom and, of course, Stacy. That wouldn't be easy." I got up and walked slowly to the bedroom. The next morning, I woke up early and went to work. I tried hard not to think about my personal problems and to focus on my job. When I came home that evening, Mary was gone. She had packed most of her clothes and personal things, as if she had never lived there. However, she did leave something behind: a letter. "Dear Jerry, I can't tell you how sorry I am for the pain I've caused you. You have never done anything to deserve my actions. I don't understand why I can't break this connection to Howard. I know it's not good for me. I promised myself I would never see him again, but I'm not sure if I can keep that promise. You have always been kind and loving. This isn't your fault at all. You are the sweetest and most caring person I've ever known, and I truly love you. I know we had a silent agreement about our feelings, but you need to know that I love you. This makes what I've done even more painful. I will be gone by the time you read this. I'll arrange to collect my remaining things soon. I hope that one day you can forgive me. I wasn't strong enough to avoid my mistakes. Please don't hate me. I'm begging you, Jerry. Please don't hate me. All my love, Mary. I fell into a chair and let the letter drop to the floor. I felt tired and empty. I knew I would miss Mary. She had been in my life for a long time. But in another way, I was relieved that she was gone. I needed some time alone to think. Then, a new thought struck me. I wanted to help her start fresh without any trouble. I had Howard's address and knew it wouldn't be hard to find him. I was determined to talk to him no matter how. I quickly changed clothes and left within 10 minutes. It took about 45 minutes to reach his place, which was in a rough neighborhood. His apartment building looked worn down. I knocked on his door and waited. When the door opened, I faced him, surprised by how intimidating he looked. I stepped into the apartment, and he backed up a bit. He soon steadied himself and stared at me. "I'm here to talk, Howard," I said. He glared at me, clearly upset. "I want you to know something important. My name is Jerry Ford. My friend, Mary Black, deserves better than what you've given her." I made sure he understood how serious this was. "You need to leave this area, Howard. I recommend you think about places far away, like California or Oregon. If I see you here again in 24 hours, there will be consequences. Do you understand?" He nodded quickly, realizing the seriousness of my words. I left and drove home, feeling heavy with what I had done. Was I really any better than him? I told myself my actions would help Mary, making things easier for her. Still, I knew my choices were tough, partly because I wanted things to be resolved. I shook my head and tried to move on. I did what I thought was needed, and now I had to deal with the results. The next day, Mr. Howard Branch was gone. Talking with my mom and Stacy was hard. They didn't really understand, and I didn't explain much. Stacy said she might come home, but Mary and I managed to persuade her to stay at school. We promised to talk later. I thought Mary finally told Stacy what had happened. When I saw my daughter next, she seemed quiet and sad. "I'll always love you, Dad," she said, warming my heart. Days and weeks passed. I continued with my life. I knew I had to decide about the company. Should I sell it or not? The buyer was patient, but he would not wait forever. He told me to take my time, saying, "There's no rush," but he also set a date for my decision. That date was coming up fast. I had a month. On one hand, I wanted to sell and relieve myself of the burden, but on the other hand, it was the only thing giving me a sense of purpose. What would I do if I sold it? So I put off my decision. Finally, a week before the deadline, I called and canceled the sale. I would keep the company. Weeks turned into months, and I realized I was now over 49 years old. The big 50 was not far away. What did I have to show for those years? A successful company, a daughter who cared for me, Stacy called every week, and a lonely life. Did I miss Mary? Of course, but it felt similar to missing Ben and Rachel. We had happy times together, but life went on. As far as I knew, Mary was doing well at work and dating. Would she find someone special? Did I mind being alone? Not really, I told myself. I had grown used to it. "Jerry," I heard Gail, my secretary, on the intercom. "You have a visitor." I was busy with project details and was a bit short with her. "I'm occupied. Handle it for me." She kept insisting. "Jerry, I think you'll want to see him. It's Bernard Van Horn." And I could hear the excitement in her voice. Everyone here knew who Bernard Van Horn was. I paused for a moment and then jumped up, moving quickly to her desk. Standing there was Bernie Van Horn, tall and slim with white hair, looking much younger than his years. I welcomed him with a tight hug, the emotions making it hard for me to speak. He hugged me back and gently patted me. "Okay, Jerry, let me breathe," he laughed. I stepped back to take a good look at him. We had kept in touch, but this was the first time I saw him in nearly 20 years. I quickly invited him into my office, and we settled into the small sitting area. I was still surprised to see him. We caught up on each other's lives. I knew he had sold his company recently. He shared that he and Kate had moved to Naples, down the coast, just a few weeks ago. It was something they had thought about for a long time, but they had never acted on it. On a whim, they flew down a month ago, looked at some houses, found one by the Gulf that they loved, and bought it. Just like that. Bernie asked how my business was going and why I chose not to sell. I explained my reasons, and he nodded in understanding. Jerry, you need to come visit us now that we're so close. Kate would be disappointed if you didn't. I promised him I would, and we reminisced some more. I talked about the early days of starting my company with very little money and struggling until I got a few lucky breaks. I noticed a spark in his eyes, and then it hit me. I couldn't believe it. I had never thought about it before. It was Bernie who had helped my company take off. I fumbled over my words, trying to express my thanks. Don't be silly, Jerry. I just made a few calls. You did all the hard work, and everyone noticed how great your work is. Your company's success is because of your talent and effort. I really didn't do much, he said dismissively. There was a pause in our conversation, and I could see him looking at me with anticipation. I knew what he was waiting for. It was time to ask. I was very curious, but also anxious. I knew that asking would open up old feelings. Bernie, how is Kimberly? Is she okay? I really hope she is doing well, I said softly. I watched as Bernie leaned back in his chair and let out a gentle breath. I've been waiting a long time for you to ask, Jerry. Thank you for asking. Kate will be glad to hear that you did. Now, about Kimberly. Bernie shifted in his seat, hesitating a bit, seeming to gather his thoughts. It's been a while since you left, and a lot has happened with her. I braced myself, knowing her child was now grown. I expected to hear that she had married and started a family, but for some reason, I didn't want to hear that. Jerry, Bernie continued, Kim lost the baby about a month after you left. She had a miscarriage, and the doctors told her she might not be able to have children again. I'm not sure I understood all the details then. She had already quit her job at the publishing company. The divorce and the miscarriage left her in a tough situation. No, it's not your fault, Jerry. Don't start blaming yourself. What happened to Kim was a result of her own choices, and she knows that. Her decisions changed her life. We were really worried about her, and it took a long time for her to feel better. In a way, what Kim went through changed her. She became more grown-up, more responsible, and maybe more caring, if that's the right word. I didn't know how to respond. This was all new to me, and I felt a bit shaken by what Bernie had just told me. I had so many feelings inside, but I couldn't figure them out at that moment. One thing was clear. Just talking about Kim stirred something in me. Bernie adjusted his position in his chair. After things calmed down and Kim seemed to be on the mend, she came to us. She said she wanted to go back to school and study medicine. We were surprised and thought it was just another part of what she was going through. But she insisted that she had really thought it through and was serious about it. To sum it up, she applied to Penn's medical school and became a doctor, focusing on treating children with cancer. She really wanted to help kids, knowing she wouldn't have any of her own. Bernie paused and looked directly at me. I was speechless. Kim had loved being an editor, so her decision to leave was shocking. Maybe her situation influenced that choice. Losing the baby must have been hard, though I found it hard to feel much sadness. What stunned me even more was that she couldn't have children and had become a doctor. Was this the same Kim I knew? It was hard to wrap my mind around. Do you want to know one reason we moved here, Jerry? Bernie asked. The main reason. We wanted to be close to Kim. We wanted to be near our daughter. I stared at him in confusion. What? She's here? I thought, feeling overwhelmed. Kim got the job as chief of pediatric oncology at the cancer center at the university here in Tampa. She's been working there for a couple of months now, Bernie said. Jerry, would you like to see her, maybe say hello? Don't worry. She doesn't even know I'm here. She would be upset if she knew I suggested this. But she knows you are in Tampa. Do you think that influenced her decision? He joked, and I saw a playful look in his eyes. Honestly, I think she would have taken the job either way because it's what she wanted, but knowing you were nearby may have crossed her mind. It's not that she didn't want to see you, she just didn't want to make things complicated for you. I shook my head, trying to absorb everything Bernie was sharing. It was a lot to process. Seeing my confusion, Bernie stood up. Okay, Jerry, I know I just dropped a lot on you. Take your time to think about it. I'll get in touch soon. As I walked him to the door, I gathered my thoughts. After he left, I went back to my desk and asked Gail not to interrupt me. I had a lot on my mind. Kim, I whispered to myself. Kim is back in Tampa. My heart raced and I felt my breathing speed up. I had some serious questions to face. What did I feel for Kim? Did I still love her? These were thoughts I had put off for years, but now they needed answers. I knew I loved Kim, but it was the Kim I had married. What did I think about this new Kim, the one who was now successful in her career? I decided I needed to see her, talk to her. Bernie and I kept in touch, and I often visited him and Kate in Naples. I was both glad and a bit let down that Kim wasn't there. I wanted to see her, but I was nervous about what I might feel. One sunny Saturday morning, Kate called and invited me over. I packed a clean shirt and enjoyed the drive down I-75. When I arrived, I let myself in and called out to them. I entered the sunroom at the back, and there stood Kim by the sliding glass doors. My breath caught. She was a short distance away, backlit by the sun, but I knew it was her. Memories rushed back. She looked just as she always had, still fit and polished. I walked toward her, and we stood looking at each other. Kim, I said quietly. Hello, Jerry. It's good to see you, she replied, reaching out her hand. I took her hand, and we shook, as if meeting for the first time. In a way, we were. Jerry, Kim said. We didn't mean to surprise you by my coming here today. I really wanted to see you. I hope you're not upset with me or my parents. No, not at all, I assured her. It's great to see you, Kim. You look well, I said, feeling happy to see her smile. We moved into the solarium and settled down around a low coffee table. At first, our conversation was a bit awkward, filled with pauses. But it soon became easier as we relaxed. Kim talked about her job while I shared some updates about my life. She already knew about Mary. It seemed Bernie and Kate had told her. I was focused on two things at once. On one level, I was engaged in our chat, and on another, I was studying Kim and trying to understand her. Even with the passage of time, she still looked wonderful. She wore a casual cotton polo and khaki shorts, showing off her tanned legs. Her hair was shorter than I remembered, and there were soft lines around her eyes and mouth. She looked great. But her eyes seemed different. There was a calmness about her, a maturity and a quiet confidence that I had never noticed before. This was a skilled professional, comfortable with herself. This was not the Kim I had dated and married, nor was it the Kim I had divorced. This was a completely new woman, and I realized I wanted to learn more about her. We spent the day talking, enjoying lunch that she made, and relaxing by the pool. I found myself connecting with her in new ways. I was attracted to this woman for the same reasons I had admired her when we were young, but she was so much more now. It was getting dark when I noticed the time. Kim, would you like to have dinner with me? I asked with hope. She smiled and replied, Jerry, I would love to, but I have plans at the center tonight. Can we do it tomorrow? We did, and we've been enjoying each other's company for the past 2 weeks. Is dating the right word? I knew that I loved Kim. Maybe I always had. I appreciated the woman she has become even more now. Does she feel the same way about me? We hadn't discussed anything too personal yet. We were simply spending time together as friends. The only expressions we shared were gentle goodnight wishes. Where will this lead? I really don't know for sure, but I feel hopeful.